November 17th, 2022 meeting of the Montgomery County Board of Commissioners. Note the presence of all three commissioners, and I am going to ask Dean Dortone to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. I have a couple quick opening comments this morning. First, as the county recovers from the economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, we know that small businesses continue to face challenges. Throughout the height of the pandemic, the county distributed $42 million in grants to small businesses and nonprofits. We remain committed to help small business owners, who are the lifeblood of our communities, fully recover. Today, I'm announcing the opening of a new small business grant program funded with $2.6 million of the county's pandemic recovery funds. This grant program will provide grants to qualifying businesses in Montgomery County, which are either located in a qualifying community of Pottstown or Norristown, or can show a financial loss due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Businesses can qualify for up to $20,000 in funds. And again, these are grant funds that do not have to be repaid. The intention of the program is to support businesses that have been impacted by the pandemic and related economic challenges. The grant program is intended to ensure that businesses with less historic access to capital are supported, such as businesses owned by socially and economically disadvantaged groups. And therefore, the Recovery Office has a goal of allocating 60% of available funds to these business owners. The public can access the application portal on our Recovery Office website at www.montcopa.org/Recovery Office. The Recovery Office will award up to $500,000 in grant funds to businesses every 30 days until all available funds are distributed. And again, a total of $2.6 million is available. For any business owner needing assistance with the application, including translation assistance, free help is available by contacting Pennsylvania Health Access Network at 610-750-8200 or by emailing MontcoTA, that stands for Technical Assistance, montcota@pahealthaccess.org. And second, I just want to remind our community about Operation Safe Homes. This is a public service organized by our District Attorney's Office and area police departments to help people get rid of unwanted guns. The second of two free gun turn-in events will be held this coming Saturday, November the 19th, at police departments throughout Montgomery County. There is no payment for the guns. All unloaded firearms will be accepted, and all collected firearms will be destroyed. No bullets, magazines, or clips will be accepted. Unwanted guns can be turned in from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Saturday, November the 19th, at 12 different Montgomery County police departments, as well as the Pennsylvania State Police Skippack Barracks. To see a full list of participating locations, visit the District Attorney's website at www.montcopa.org/DA, or residents can call the Montgomery County Detective Bureau at 610-278-3368.
Good morning, everyone. I want to make a few comments on the general election from November 8th. First, I want to congratulate everyone who ran and wish the winners the best of luck in their upcoming terms. And as always, I want to give a special shout out and thank you to the poll workers, ballot counters, voter services staff, the District Attorney's Office, other county staff, and everyone who helps make sure that the election ran smoothly. We can't do this without the hundreds of people who sign up and are committed to making sure we have free and fair elections each and every time. In total, we saw a 68.3% voter turnout rate, with 414,783 of our 607,301 registered voters participating in the election. All unofficial results can be seen on our election results dashboard on the Voter Services website at www.montcopa.org/voterservices. The website reflects the real-time unofficial results as they are processed. These results remain unofficial until the election is certified no later than November 28, 2022. The site will continue to be updated until all eligible ballots have been processed. And tomorrow, November 18th at 12:30 p.m., the Board of Elections will hold a hearing in the Commissioners' Boardroom to hear a challenge on one provisional ballot. The hearing will be streamed on our website and social media channels and recorded and placed on our YouTube channel. And thank you everyone who voted, and thank you again to everyone who participated to help make sure the election ran smoothly. And finally, I just want to remind people about our HHS holiday donations. We're still collecting items for our residents in need of food, clothing, and other items needed to stay healthy and warm this winter. Our Office of Health and Human Services is running a holiday drive for gifts, gift cards, and winter coats. And for more information, you can visit www.montcopa.org/HHS donations. Thank you.
All right, then we will move on to announcements. We are first going to start with Ms. Kaylee Silver. It is National Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week. Good morning.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Commissioners and staff. I am Kaylee Silver. I oversee the Montgomery County Office of Housing and Community Development, and thank you for having me here today to highlight Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week. Can we go to the next slide, please? Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week is taking place now. It started November 12th, and it lasts through Sunday the 20th. Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week is an annual and national program where people come together across the country to draw attention to the problems of hunger and homelessness. Nationally, more than 37 million Americans are at risk of suffering from hunger, and 3.5 million people sleep in parks, cars, shelters, under bridges, or outside. And more than 1 in 6 children live in poverty. Locally here in Montgomery County, our street outreach teams in Montgomery County are serving more than 600 people sleeping outside and in need of housing, as well as 75 families right now who are experiencing homelessness and in need. To shed light on homelessness and hunger existing in Montgomery County, Your Way Home is honoring Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week and have hosted a series of events and fundraisers and education events. To learn about all of these, please visit the website you see here on the screen, yourwayhome.org/HH-Week. Next slide, please. If you're interested in getting involved, and you certainly don't have to get involved just during this week, we would love to see continued involvement and partnership. There are plenty of opportunities to volunteer, donate, or educate yourself. Your Way Home is currently collecting donations to be able to provide blankets, socks, emergency medical supplies, and hotel stays to people experiencing unsheltered homelessness in our county. To donate, please visit www.yourwayhome.org/donate. Next slide, please. And I would like to really take a moment to highlight all of our partners and thank all of our partner organizations who work to end homelessness and hunger here in Montgomery County. And really, firstly, I'd like to thank my staff today, again, out of the Montgomery County Office of Housing and Community Development, who come into work every day to help solve these problems. Some of them are here today. I have Ms. Sanithia Hill, our Deputy Director, Ruth Almy, and Vishal Gandhi. So all of them come in, and all of my staff come in today, every day, to really tackle these problems, and I'm so grateful for their partnership. The staff and all these partner organizations work towards our shared mission, which is to ensure that everyone who lives, works, learns, and invests in our county has equal opportunity to live in a home and in a thriving community. I so appreciate all their dedication to the work, and you'll see here on this slide all the Your Way Home partner organizations who work tirelessly to end hunger and homelessness. Their partnership is crucial in this work, and I thank all of them. And I have a few of these partners here with me today who will be giving further education on the existence of homelessness and hunger in Montgomery County and their work to combat it. With me today, I have Sunanda Charles, who's the Executive Director of the Norristown Hospitality Center, Mr. Mark Borst, Director of Program Development for Access Services, and Amanda Musselman, Executive Director of the Montgomery County Anti-Hunger Network, or MON. And I'm going to first start by welcoming up Ms. Sunanda Charles.
Good morning. welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Kelly, and good morning, commissioners and everyone here in the room. My name is Sunanda Charles. I'm the Executive Director of the Norristown Hospitality Center. I'm grateful for the opportunity today to speak before you and to share about the work of the Hospitality Center. Over 3 decades of being a first point of contact for a lot of people experiencing unsheltered homelessness, what started off as an earnest effort of faith-based leaders to provide a safe space for people wandering the streets at the time the state hospital shut down many years ago and people with severe mental health conditions were left on the streets. And today, the center has evolved into a multi-service organization with compassionate service as its core value. Just yesterday morning, I was at the annual recognition breakfast hosted by the Family Services of Montgomery County, where the Hospitality Center was honored with the Community Champion Award. For years, I believed that if I kept my head down and did great work, the funding would follow, recognition would follow. But that is not necessarily true. The recognition followed, not the funding. From being open during the pandemic while everyone had closed their offices and were working from home, to finding innovative ways to continue serving our people, my staff and I worked tirelessly, and we seamlessly resumed our normal operations in March of this year. Every year during December, we observe the longest night by holding a service in honor of those that we lost that year. In December of 2020, we noted 14 people that were known to us, most of them living on the streets at that time, passed away due to various reasons. We knew about the crisis that the county was facing with a lack of shelter beds, and we partnered with a local church to open a Code Blue shelter because we did not want to see any more lives taken with the combination of COVID and the cold winter. We ran a Code Blue shelter for 2 years. That was the first time we received $5,000 from Your Way Home to run the Code Blue shelter, and we raised the rest of the money ourselves. For years now, the center has had its own fundraising sources, be it foundation, corporations, churches, etc., for our operating expenses. Being a trained social worker myself, I have explored ways to solicit county funding and only last year applied for the rapid rehousing program. We were denied, and another organization's project got approved as they had more experience than us administering such a program. During the ARPA funding process, as is the practice with everything we do at the center, I called the county to ask where the greatest need was. Over the years, we have been able to consistently listen to the population we serve and have added programs to meet their needs. So in reaching out, I was told that the greatest need was in the area of street outreach and a 24-hour crisis hotline, as the current programs were not meeting the needs. We scored an 89 on our application, but did not get funded. The reason given was there were other similar programs already in operation, so help me God. I find it hard to believe that out of $161 million, we did not get a single dollar in funding, while we are the only organization in the county that is on the front lines doing this work as much as we are. Just as I was trying to get over that, 2 new funding opportunities were presented. One was the rapid rehousing, and the other one for unsheltered homelessness. I was so glad to see an opportunity for the very thing we do. I'm still hoping that we don't get denied, as this is a thing that we are known for. In the first round of our application, we were scored 59. I called Kaylee and asked her why that low score for a program that only we have been operating successfully in the county. And the answer I received was, the people who scored your application don't know about your work. But do these scores impact the HUD determination whether we will get the funding or not? If so, then someone has to tell the people who score our applications about the work we do on the ground. Who is that going to be? We need someone to advocate for us. I'm advocating for all the people that we served last year. Last year, we got $85,000 to do case management from the county. In one fiscal year, we enrolled 487 unsheltered people on HMIS. 487 people that we provided intensive case management and supportive housing, supportive services to, sorry. That is a lot. And this year we're seeing an increased amount of people at the center every day. Traffic's increased. And we get no funding to do the work every day. And so here I am. Last night we organized a sleep out. This was the first sleep out in Montgomery County. The hospitality center organized that. About 50 people attended, and at least 20 ended up sleeping out. We heard from Senator Capoletti, Commissioner Lawrence, and from 3 other people who have experienced unsheltered homelessness, and one poignant story about a woman who will likely not get a much-needed liver transplant if she does not get into housing by February next year, which means it is simply a matter of life and death for her. And she has been receiving supportive services and volunteered to speak at last night's event. Since July of this year, the center has seen 178 new cases, new clients that we've enrolled, providing various kinds of services, direct referrals for resources and clinical supports, 88, advocacy and contact assistance with partner and community agencies, social service providers, 461 contacts. Direct referrals to drug and alcohol treatment centers, 18 people were directly sent to drug and alcohol centers from our office. Lens crafters referrals, 80 people were provided with glasses so they could see. They were given a letter of referral to go to the to lens crafters and got assessed. And documented client encounters, 644 since July. We got a sub-grant from CADCOM early this year, $50,000. They said, we have so much money to spend. Can you spend this money for us? Can you start a rapid rehousing light program? We said, absolutely. And we started the program. And since we started it, we have housed 13 individuals to date. Yes, we know it's a problem finding landlords, finding affordable housing, but our staff do that difficult work on the front line. And we have housed, and they're still in their housing to date. So I'm here to ask you all if there is an opportunity to open up conversations about funding, whether there is any ARPA money that is still unallocated or otherwise. An organization like ours that is seeing a huge uptick in numbers needs funding to sustain what we do. I urge you to consider my request on behalf of the 487 unsheltered individuals that we provided intensive case management to last year, and the 178 and continuing to see people that we are supporting this year. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the update, and we really appreciate all that you're doing.
Good morning. I'm Mark Borse. I'm the Director of Program Development at Access Services, and I appreciate the time to come and talk to you this morning. In my mind's eye, we are in a time right after a bad winter storm, that moment of relative calm when we all venture outside to see what has happened and to assess the damage. Hard economic times and loss of jobs, loss of loved ones, loss of our collective equilibrium. This is the aftermath of the past several years. Part of this landscape is the dramatic increase in those living with food insecurity and hunger, and those struggling with housing insecurity or living outside. This is the crisis in front of us. And make no mistake, it is a crisis. Across the county, there are now close to 4 times the number of people sleeping outside than there were before COVID. Yesterday's street outreach stats included 74 families experiencing homelessness, up from 15 families 2 years ago, and 86 individuals who are 55 and older. It is clear that there is much work to do, and that we can no longer assume or hope that the service system alone will find the answer. This is a community-level crisis that will take each of us and all of us to overcome. Towards that end, I would like to offer 3 actions that we can all take, summed up in 3 simple words: see, believe, do. First of all, see. Homelessness is in every single community in the county. It's in every single Walmart parking lot, but it's hidden, sometimes out of the way, sometimes in plain sight. So we have to look, we have to get proximate to the people experiencing homelessness and to the people in every single community who are close to them. The ones who hand out food and sleeping bags and know everyone by name and the stories that go with each name. Brian Stevens says that when we get proximate, it changes the narrative that we tell. We will see people as being more than the same as us than different from us. We will recognize that the storms we all face hit some of us harder. Number 2, believe in a couple of truths. Believe that this is a crisis that is urgent and requires action. Believe that this is a matter of justice, that it is wrong that some of our neighbors live outside. Believe that each have a part to play in the solution, and that when we decide to do something, things will improve. 3, do. There is something for each of us to do. For some of us, this might be part of our vocation. For others, it is investing in the community. For yet others, it is in volunteering and giving back or paying forward. Look around in your community, find who is doing something, join them. This is one of the, I brought a blanket here today. It's the most colorful one I could find. And the guard, when I came in, he said, "Is that a blanket?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "I don't think anyone's ever tried to get a blanket into this building." This is one of a number of blankets that have been collected and donated by young people at the youth shelter here in the county. A good friend who works there believes that young people can and should learn that regardless of the situation, serving others is important. When I stand still for a minute and realize that these are young people living in a shelter, giving to people who have no shelter, I'm sure that I can find a way to help, and that you can too. In closing, my mind's eye goes back to that storm. After people come out into the street and look around, maybe greet a neighbor, it's not too long before you hear the sound of a snowblower or a shovel, or if trees are down, a chainsaw, and people start asking each other if they're okay and what they need. It's what we do when we are faced with hard times. It's what we need to do and can do now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Amanda Musselman, and I'm the Executive Director at Monco Anti-Hunger Network, MON. I would like to thank the Montgomery County Board of Commissioners for this proclamation today and for their continued support of ending hunger in Montgomery County. Generally, Montgomery County is perceived as a very affluent area, but the truth is hunger exists all over the entire county for 7% of our residents, as stated in Feeding America's Map the Meal Gap report. Every day, tough decisions are being made. It's usually a choice between food and other critical needs like medicine, housing, childcare, and transportation cost. Over half of those in need of food assistance make too much to qualify for nutritional programs like the federal SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. MON's inclusive network of over 60 emergency food providers become a safe haven not only during times of emergency like the COVID-19 pandemic or Hurricane Ida, but a regular, reliable source of weekly food. None of us are strangers to the significant food price increases that we've experienced this year of over 10%. While the impacts of inflation are being experienced widespread, the burden has hit our lower income families the hardest, and that's leaving a 75% increase of sustained need across our network at the emergency food pantries that MON services. This is being coupled with a decrease in community donations, both monetary and in physical food. And most of our network is in need of additional food resources to serve the increased need they are continuing to see. Even though we no longer see the long lines at food cupboards on the news like we did during the height of the pandemic, it doesn't mean that hunger no longer exists. With Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week, it's important to note that hunger does not happen in isolation. I am proud to work in partnership with our partners here today to build collective impact around the root causes of food insecurity. When speaking of the impact our emergency food system provides, I really enjoy using the word nourishment because it's the food and other substances necessary for good condition, health, and general well-being. Our network prides itself on its investment it makes in its community each and every single day, no matter what is going on, creating very authentic relationships where the voices of our community inform our decision-making and creates a safe environment that is welcoming and responsive for all. Mon cannot end hunger alone, and there are many ways our community can take action against hunger, and I welcome you to get involved in Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week by listening, volunteering, or donating, because no one should have to make an impossible choice between food and other critical needs. Thank you so much.
I want to thank all of you so much for being here today and raising up these very important issues. Commissioner Lawrence and I were at an event yesterday that Kaylee Silver and her team organized around the issue of individuals experiencing homelessness and what we need to do to get everyone in the county on board with helping to solve this crisis. This is a problem that affects all of us, and it requires all of us, both personally and across our 62 municipalities, to share in the solutions. As we've said many times, if every one of our municipalities just ensured that a small number of affordable units were available in their municipality, this problem could largely be solved. So I want to thank all of you for raising up these very important issues. I want to ask anyone who's listening today to dig deep over these next weeks, especially as we approach the holiday season. If you're able to help, whether it's with a financial contribution, a donation of blankets or clothing or other tangible goods, or volunteer at a food pantry, or many other opportunities that exist across the county to help. We urge all of you to do that. And I think one of the most important things is one of the points that Mark made, which is to actually get to know people and understand what people's challenges are. Any one of us is one job loss, one domestic incident, one hurricane away from experiencing homelessness. And this could be any of us at any time. And it really will take our community to pull together to solve this problem once and for all. So again, thank you to all of you.
I want to thank everyone for coming today. There's 52 weeks in the year, so this is just 1 week. You all are doing it 365 days a year. I've often said that this is an invisible issue, that if people don't see it, they don't want to hear about it, it's not there. So thank you for bringing visibility to this, but thank you for seeing the people that need the help each and every day. This is a very difficult issue, but as I've said, we're the second wealthiest county in PA, and we had over 400 people sleep on the streets last night. Before 2020, over 100,000 people food insecure. As Val said, this is something that we need to work on together, and when we say it's a county-wide problem, we don't mean the county government has all the solutions for it. We need our partners, we need our municipalities, but we need you to hold us accountable and continue to shine light on this. So thank you for being here today, and thank you for all that you do.
I'd also like to thank you all for taking time out of your day to attend our meeting this morning and provide the update, and I appreciate what you do to help those in need in our community. And it certainly is multi-sectors that need to come together to help prevent homelessness and hunger in Montgomery County, and mental illness, job loss, the need for employment. Many roads can lead to that situation. It's important that we all communicate and work together to make sure that that's not occurring in Montgomery County, and you all play a key role in that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we are going to hear from some of our colleagues at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Dr. Allison Ballantyne will be joining us. CHOP reached out over the last few days wanting to make sure that everyone in our community understood the very critical situation that we are in with our children around flu, RSV, and COVID. And so with that, good morning, Dr. Ballantyne.
Good morning, and thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity to speak to you and our county, and to say first how grateful we are to be here as part of this community and listening to your presentations and the work you're doing here, and the sort of exciting opportunity that I will say that many of our employees and the folks that we that have converged around our hospital are really happy to have had some volunteer opportunities here in the community, working in one of the food pantries, and just a really great experience and feeling like this is our new home, and thanking you all for welcoming us. And as part of that, we really appreciate the opportunity to come as a meta level physician presence to talk a little bit about how we, like many medical providers across the entire country, CHOP is seeing an increased volume of viral infections across the board. Many of our children are experiencing what we're calling an immunity debt, meaning they have not been exposed to viruses during the pandemic, and so there's now 2 birth cohorts of especially young children and infants that are really getting hit hard. We're seeing an earlier than normal surge of RSV, which has also been much higher. That's it's a cold virus, and this particular virus is no more virulent, no more dangerous than it ever has been before. There's just a lot of it. And we're also seeing more flu already. So this has resulted in an increasingly high number of patients who are seeking care in a lot of different settings. And we know there are long wait times across the board related to appointment availability. We recognize also that it can be really frustrating and potentially scary. And we want to assure our patients and families that we are doing everything we can to make sure that the children of Montgomery County and across the board have access to the care they need when they need it. And CHOP is doing everything to mount a really strong response. We've developed a task force to address this high capacity viral crisis, and doing everything we can to mobilize staff and really bringing the resources to the places where we need it. We're working with our partners in Philadelphia and all of our other sites, in fact, to find creative solutions to get that support mobilized. We do also want to sort of arm our patients and our families and all of you out there to make sure that everybody has the resources that they can to help support during this time. It can be really stressful when kids are sick, when your own child is sick. It's interesting, we're encountering more families who have young infants and young toddlers who have actually almost never been sick because of all the masking, and just learning how that goes, and what it's like to be a new parent with a child with a fever, when to worry, when not to worry. I'll pop in the chat in a minute our the CHOP website that we put together that has a variety of tips around symptoms and what can be managed at home, when to worry, and in particular where to find the best place for care when you do need it, whether it's an emergency department, an urgent care, or primary care, how to sort of suss all of that out. We are very happy to be here as the new King of Prussia Hospital and providing a much needed emergency department and inpatient capacity at this time when we are seeing so many sick children. But due to this extreme surge, whether you're visiting CHOP or a different primary care provider, we know that you may well experience a long wait, and just encouraging folks to think about that ahead of time and bringing toys and snacks and drinks, whatever it would take, as if you were going on a long airplane flight. It may feel the same way waiting to be seen for medical care right now. And we have done everything we can to mobilize our staff. It's just really tough right now to get the volume of support out there. we've made some great strides, and in fact, we're mobilizing some emergency staffing planning with our trainees and pulling them into some new roles. We have some wonderful new transitions to from our nursing teams and our nursing students who are completing their training and moving them into employee status in different roles. So lots going on, but it is a tough time. We anticipate this is going to continue throughout the winter, as it always does for pediatrics. And so continuing to think about how can we prevent, especially our youngest patients, children, from getting the viruses, which are the biggest issue that we're facing right now. We do see a little bit of COVID, but honestly, very few children are being significantly impacted by COVID now. It's almost exclusive these other viruses that are washing across our region right now. So hand washing, staying home if you're sick, keeping small children and infants away from sick people, and most importantly, making sure that those who are eligible children are getting their flu shots, and making sure that adults are getting their flu shots as well to protect those children. So again, I will pop our website into the chat as a resource. Please share this with your friends and family. Let them know we are here and how much we care and how much we want to support folks. And when you need to come to the emergency room, please, by all means, come. We are here. But again, just trying to get that message out around it's a really tough time, and how to think about that as best we can. We are excited to go back to the beginning of this. Like, we are really glad to be here in Montgomery County, and we are excited to be growing rapidly. We opened with 4 inpatient, with 4 of our floors. We added a 5th just in November. We'll be opening our final floor next winter, fall, winter. We're pushing that as fast as we can. We didn't expect we would be opening our full 108 beds 2 years after we opened the hospital, but the demand and the welcome that we've received has been wonderful. And we are also expanding our emergency department, adding 8 new rooms this winter. So it's been terrific to come here. We're happy to be here as your partners, and glad to have this opportunity to speak with you. So thank you very much for having us. And I am just gonna pop in this. That is our website in the chat if anybody needs it. And again, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Dr. Ballantyne. We really appreciate hearing from you today. We're so grateful to have CHOP here in the county. The outpatient facilities are great, but now with the opening of the new hospital, it's just added an incredible resource for people here in our county and some of the neighboring counties as well. So thank you for that update, and we look forward to staying in close touch. And thank you for all this information for our families.
One other thing I would just love to slip in on a different note is that as we are growing, we're also hiring. So please, if folks are thinking about professions across the board in the healthcare professions, please check out our website. We've got lots of great opportunities there with our new floors that we're opening. So thank you so much for this time.
Thank you. Take care. And then next up is Dr. Richard Lorraine, who is the medical director for our Office of Public Health, to give some more countywide updates on the flu season that we are experiencing.
Indeed, and thank you for having me here this morning, or I'm there virtually anyhow. Since I am speaking from my other part-time position, I have a disclaimer. The information that I'm going to be presenting is in my capacity as the medical director of the Montgomery County Office of Public Health, and does not necessarily reflect the views of the United States Air Force or the New Jersey Air National Guard. And having said that, I really, really appreciate having Dr. Ballantyne lead into this, because all I'm going to be doing essentially is showing you graphs that really represent what she was talking about. We've been focusing on COVID very much, of course, for the last 3 years or so, but as Dr. Ballantyne noted, because of the mitigation strategies that we've had, there's been a less exposure perhaps to other types of viruses that are normally circulating, such as flu and RSV. And this is something that may present some really significant challenges for us. So I felt it important that we really focus on that a little bit and present some of this information. Next slide, please. So I don't have to talk too much about RSV because Dr. Ballantyne explained that this is a
rather common respiratory virus that we see every year, but because particularly children who have the largest percentage-wise amount of these cases have not been exposed to it for a couple of years, we're seeing a much earlier peak and a much greater level of severity. Next slide, please. So typically, RSV can just cause cold-type symptoms, but it can be severe, and particularly in very, very young children with less resistance. It can lead to inflammation in the lung called bronchiolitis. The other thing that it can do is affect our older individuals as well. Adults 65 and older are also particularly susceptible to RSV complications. So between them, there can be, typically over 200,000 hospitalizations and up to 15,000 or so deaths per year in a normal year. Next, please. Well, this is not quite a normal year. So if you look at the three lines in green, purple, and orange, they track somewhat the same. The 2020-21 year is represented in blue at the bottom, and that was a very, very abnormal year because of all the mitigation strategies we had for COVID. So you saw there's an extremely low level of infection then. Look all the way to the left, and you see in that green dotted line what we have so far this year. So clearly, there's an earlier surge of RSV cases. We don't know what the final amplitude of this will be, but we're now roughly 2 to 3 months ahead of where we normally are. The level of infection that we're seeing at this point is much more typical of January or even February. Next slide, please. So flu, influenza is a very, very significant disorder. We talk about it year after year. I was last at the commissioners meeting talking about flu and flu immunization when a couple of our commissioners got their flu vaccine. And I'm actually reusing some of those slides today. But here's a graphic representation of the number of flu deaths on average that we've seen over the past decade. And again, the last couple of years with COVID are atypical. One of them is not even represented there because the numbers were so small. But typically, we'll see on average between 50, maybe 60,000 deaths per season from flu. And it's a very, very significant illness because it's not just the deaths that we experience, but the significant morbidity. When I see patients in the office with flu, it's actually, in most cases, not too difficult to diagnose because they come in and they tell me one of three things. Number one, I feel like I got hit by a truck. Number two, I feel so bad even my hair hurts. And number three, I feel like I'm going to die, but I'm afraid I won't. This is a very, very significant disease. And not only is there a lot of morbidity associated with it, but there's also a lot of secondary complications. Next, please. Well, here's the graph of what we're seeing in Montgomery County. Again, the green line at the bottom and the sort of orange line are the last 2 years. They're very atypical. The other three that you'll see going back for 3 more seasons are much more typical. So we normally have a beginning of cases significantly in October, November, but it doesn't really peak in usually up until late January, early February. All the way on the left, there's this year's graph, the red. So we're seeing that significant early peak. Again, we're 2 to 3 months ahead of where we normally are. The other thing is, again, we don't know where the final peak on this is going to be. I don't think this data has been fully modified yet. So I believe in Montgomery County, we're now tracking over 1,000 cases this season. So the slope of that red line has continued exactly as it is right there. And will it peak at 1,000? Will it peak at 2,000? We really, really don't know. But what we know is that we are a lot earlier in cases this year than we have been in a very, very long time. Probably going back at least a decade or more. Next slide, please. So here's some slides I'm reusing from my previous presentation. What can we do to decrease the severity of flu? And by the way, I'll just divert for a second and talk about the type of vaccination that we do for flu, is actually similar to what our goals are in vaccination for COVID. It's nice if it prevents the disease, but the main purpose of the vaccination is to decrease the severity of the disease. So decrease the number of hospitalizations, decrease the number of deaths. We know through extensive research that vaccination for flu protects pregnant women, protects their child once they are born as well for up to 6 months. Certainly people with chronic illnesses are much protected by getting flu vaccines. And of course, if there's less flu or less shedding of viral particles, we're going to protect other people from catching it from us. Next, please. So we talk about this every year, and we talk about all the benefits that can be provided by flu. About half of people in America who are eligible to get flu vaccines don't get them. We could prevent lots and lots of hospitalizations and deaths and time off from work and illness if more people got vaccinated. Next, please. So here's the other thing that's particularly concerning for this year. If we look at the number of flu vaccinations over the past 3 years, the red line on the bottom is where we're tracking the current year. So we're seeing the lowest level of flu vaccinations that we have since the beginning of the pandemic. Part of it may be due to vaccine fatigue and other reasons, but it is definitely tracking lower. Now, these are adult immunizations. On the one hand, I'm pleased to say that pediatric immunizations are running at about the same level they have the last few years. On the other hand, pediatric immunizations could stand to be increased as well. But here we are facing the earliest rise and potentially the highest peak in flu illness in many, many years, yet we're seeing the lowest vaccination rate that we've seen in a long time. Next, please. So, of course, Montgomery County does have quite a number of initiatives to try to improve our flu vaccination. Our scheduled vaccine clinics for flu, and most of them were for COVID as well, have all been completed at this point. We do still maintain availability at our health centers for flu vaccination for those who are uninsured or underinsured. Next, please. And I always like to mention our stellar partner, the Montgomery County Immunization Coalition, which has facilitated and partnered with so many vaccine initiatives. They still have a couple of upcoming ones, and I included the posters for them here. And their new ones are being added all the time. I encourage you to go to their website if you are looking for a flu clinic in your area. I will mention that most medical offices and most pharmacies have a very good supply of vaccine, and it remains available and ready to go. Next, please. Now, the title of this presentation was Other Infectious Diseases in the Time of COVID. So I'm just going to include this because it kind of sums up in the next slide. So if you look at the graph of COVID cases over time, it's interesting to note that there has not yet been seasonality demonstrated very well with COVID. So we do see an increase in cases from time to time, but these are due to the new variants that come out, and not so much the fact that we necessarily see an increase of cases during the fall and winter months. We have not had enough time to really establish whether or not that truly is the case, however. But there is a significant level of underlying cases that continues. It is, thank goodness, lower than it was before, particularly at that large Omicron peak. And a disclaimer for the data here, particularly for the past year, the number of cases is underreported because we've had the availability of home testing, where those cases no longer are truly reported into this information base. I'll also, by the way, point out, as I had noted in previous presentations, if you look at the corresponding death rates from COVID and compare them to the number of cases, you'll see with each succeeding spike of COVID cases, the relative number of deaths has gone down. It started off when it first showed up with a very high level of deaths. The second wave, the graphic representation is about the same. The third wave you see it's about maybe 50% or so of the representation of the number of cases. The fourth sort of wave, even lower amount, and when we extrapolate all the way out to the end here, we're seeing very, very low numbers overall of COVID cases. And there are multiple reasons why this has occurred, the largest one of which is now the pool of immunity in the general population. And that has been attained by the massive vaccination program that has been undertaken. There is a contribution to this from the natural disease state, people who have had COVID. Also, that does contribute to your immunity. The fact that probably by estimates 80 to 90% of the population has had COVID to this point. And it also relates to the fact that we've got better therapeutics, and we've also identified the population at risk much better. Now, tying together these three things, RSV, influenza, and COVID, next slide, please. This leads to something that we've been calling in the medical community, probably for now, well, maybe 3 or 4 months, a potential triple-demic. So our concern was, now we have extremely high levels of flu, extremely high levels of RSV, and potentially increasing numbers of COVID, all presenting at the same time. And as Dr. Valentine mentioned, this is already stressing the healthcare system. It's not just on the pediatric part, it's also on the general adult hospitals too. We're seeing increased numbers of admissions for acute illness, whether it's flu or RSV. There are COVID numbers that are increasing a little bit as well. So all of this is coming together at one time to really start creating a significant stress again on the healthcare system. The main thing that people can do at this point are to look at mitigation strategies. And I will finish up by just talking mostly about 3 of them. Obviously, I'm going to reiterate, if you have not gotten a flu vaccine yet, please consider it. There is still time. It takes about 2 weeks for that vaccine to become effective, but it's definitely going to be useful, as we probably will not hit a peak for at least another couple months. So I encourage everyone to take advantage of that and get a flu vaccine. From personal experience, some of the patients I've been treating with flu have been vaccinated, and I will tell you, I see a major difference in terms of their symptom presentation. They're not feeling well, but they're not feeling as badly as people with flu normally do. It's very clear to me, and the data is supporting it, that the vaccine definitely ameliorates the symptoms. So far this year, the flu vaccine has been a very good match for the strains that have been identified. The other mitigation strategies, things I've been talking about for many, many years. Please wash your hands, keep them away from your face, and whenever possible, children or adults who are ill should stay home to try avoid spreading this to others. I recognize that sometimes there are demands that really require people's presence, but if we can try to do those 3 things, that's going to make everyone probably less ill this winter and definitely decrease the stress on the healthcare system. Next, please. And that's pretty much all I wanted to say, but I'll just reiterate that that last slide, the studies do show that if you do get a flu vaccination, it has the potential to decrease both the risk of hospitalization and the duration of a hospital stay. It decreases the risk that you'll end up in the intensive care unit, and it definitely decreases the number of deaths. So I strongly encourage those of you who have not yet decided to get your flu vaccine to please consider doing so. And that's all that I have for today. Thank you for letting me be here and speak to this.
Thanks, Dr. Lorraine. We appreciate the update. And just one quick question. Can you just review who's eligible to get a flu shot?
Okay, so anyone 6 months and older is eligible for a flu shot. I had mentioned that up to 6 months old, the babies can get some protection by their mother being vaccinated. And just also mentioning that people 65 and older usually will get an augmented vaccine. It's a little higher dose. And that accounts for the fact that the immune system doesn't necessarily respond quite as well at that age. So a higher dose is required to produce that immunity. But again, anyone 6 months and older, without exception, is eligible for flu vaccine. Accommodations can be made for those with egg allergy or who might have reacted to a vaccine in the past.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for your guard service. It's good to see you over there. All right. Next, we will move on to public comment. Mr. Stein, do you want to go through the rules?
Sure thing. All speakers should sign into the meeting on the sheet available in the back of the room or virtually as indicated by Ms. Co-Francisco. All speakers should come to the podium if they are physically able. Speakers should identify themselves by name and municipality. Those seeking to speak during the time set aside for public comments on items appearing on the agenda must state the specific agenda items they wish to address. Those seeking to speak during the time set aside for general public comments must identify the subject matter which they wish to address.
I have an objection.
Noted. Would you like to state the nature of your objection?
Actually, it's the whole thing. I don't know where you got your law degree, but apparently you either have a learning disability or you don't know how to interpret the law. And this is going on 3 years that you're in this position and you still haven't gotten it. So I don't understand that at all, and I don't understand why people can come up here and take 15, 20 minutes for a presentation, but a person from the public who wants to make a comment on anything is limited to 2 minutes, which is not nearly enough time. It used to be 5 minutes, and you need to go back to that, Valerie. Thank you.
As I was saying, all public comments must be relevant or germane to county business. Under the law, this means that the subject matter of all comments must be limited to items or issues which are currently before the Commissioners for consideration, or which may come before the Commissioners for consideration at a future meeting. Whether a matter is germane to county business is a determination to be made by the county solicitor. A time limit of 2 minutes will be monitored, and county staff will respectfully request speakers to conclude their comments if the speaker goes beyond the time allotted. The board is not required to respond to public comments during the course of the meeting, so the public is reminded this is not an opportunity for dialogue or questions and answers. The board chair may direct appropriate county staff to follow up on any questions or additional comments after the meeting. Disruptive behavior, including but not limited to yelling from the seats, arguing whether a matter is germane to county business once the solicitor has made a determination of such, or refusing to yield the floor once time has elapsed and being requested to sit down, shall be grounds for removal or muting from the meeting without further admonishment or warning. And as always, the Commissioners welcome written correspondence, comments, and feedback at commissioners@montgopa.org.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. All right, so we will start with public comment and matters appearing on today's agenda. And again, as a reminder, we need to know which agenda item, and then that will be followed by general public comment. So, Ms. Co-Francisco?
First, we have Alana Hook with agenda item comment on D1.
Good morning.
Good morning. I apologize for my dress down appearance this morning. I'm coming from the sleep out event, but I wanted to recognize that this is a crucial part of our county. Good morning. Many of you know me already, but I'm here today on behalf of the board of the Hospitality Center. As you know, the Hospitality Center is now one of the only walk-in options for individuals who are unhoused or facing homelessness here in the county. The proximity of this program to the county courthouse lends itself to the integrity and the crucial nature of the outreach that they do on a daily basis. Often in my role, I find myself and my staff walking clients down the street to meet Sanunda and her caseworkers, to find hope and options for them as they leave incarceration, are facing incarceration, or are generally impacted by the criminal justice system. But why is it this way? I know that this is not always or entirely the county's problem, that we do have to rely on county ordinances or municipality ordinances to help establish rules and guidance. But I wanted to raise this issue here today and use our proximity to privilege and power to elevate these needs and raise questions to some of what we see going on. Why do we have ordinances that are seeking to criminalize poverty immediately following the closure of one of our only shelters here in Norristown? Why are we not funding more adequately these programs and assisting people to find the stability that we all know they need to survive and thrive here in Montgomery County? Why are we issuing fines and costs that people cannot pay, that end up in civil judgments or incarceration, that impact their lives in remarkable ways that we cannot just undo with the snap of our fingers or the waving of a hand? An example that I see so often is that when people are, quote, camping here, the police have a heavy presence and involve themselves. Many of our clients are traumatized already, and this is an exacerbation of their mental health. They're here because they want to use the resources that we have here in Montgomery County, not because they want to be left on the streets.
Thank you, Ms. Hook.
Next, we have Pauline Braccio, who has agenda item comment on D2.
Good morning, Pauline Braccio, Tomlinson Township. Dr. Valentine, I don't know if she's under D1 or D2, I'm pretty sure it was D2, said that COVID does not affect children now. COVID never really did affect children the way they thought it or wanted to say that it did. So I'm glad that she's finally admitting that COVID really does not affect children. Dr. Lorraine said that there was many, many more deaths due to COVID in the beginning. A lot of that was because people were put on ventilators, which then later was found out should never have happened. Nearly 100% of the people who were put on ventilators did die. And so they weren't really dying from COVID, they were dying from being put on a ventilator alone, without their family around them. That is still shameful in this day and age, and we're supposed to be a first world country. I don't see us as a first world country at all. There are many other countries right now who are banning the COVID vaccine in people ages 50 and younger. And still you are insisting that everybody get vaccinated with the COVID vaccine. That is just contrary to what the information is that we have now. So I'm not sure why you don't update your view or your opinion. I mean, do you have the same problem as Josh? That you just don't comprehend what you're reading, or don't you just read it? I mean, I don't understand that at all. Someone who keeps saying she's a physician and you're not looking at the information and interpreted it correctly. And also the other thing is about the flu. Dr. Lorraine said that 50% of the people are getting it, the vaccine, and 50% don't. And I asked this a few years ago, out of the 50% of the people who don't get the flu vaccine, how many are getting the flu and dying from it versus the people who do get the flu vaccine? I'm not sure any of vaccines are effective any longer. Thank you.
Next, we have David Morgan, who has agenda item comment on item H.
Good morning. I'm from Ambler, Pennsylvania. I'm commenting on Section H, the proposed 2023 budget. The property taxpayers and renters in our county have been severely affected by high inflation. Inflation contributes to homelessness, too. Government spending is too high at the federal and county levels. If anything, we could benefit from a tax cut. Please downsize the Justice Center spending. I'm concerned that in the 2023 Capital Improvement Program, page 3, County Campus Plan, we see $112 million, followed by other years of high cost. You'll see $88 million, next year 68, 34 million. Maybe removal of 3 floors of the Justice Center could reduce the cost by $100 million. Let's have town halls at the Bluebell and Pottstown campuses of the community college. A full accounting of these phases of historically high spending is frankly overdue. Then we can see how to put workers across the street into construction of affordable housing, because obviously that's the big need we have. During last commissioner meeting, costs for item M were not identified in the agenda as such, whereas in the past, the Justice Center label appears in the agenda. Commissioner Gale noted that growth in 2 construction services from $5 to $14.5 million, as well as $16 to $27.5 million happened when $232 million was spent in one meeting in August 2021. Commissioner Gale cautioned about the extreme growth in costs, saying, quote, "I just want to point out that this Justice Center project was originally supposed to be $220 million, and just at this board meeting alone, phase 2 construction is over $232 million.
Mr. Warren, sorry, your time is up.
Objection, he's in the middle of speaking.
Mr. Warren, thank you very much.
I have some solutions I want to
You're welcome to submit those.
Yeah, you're
if you'd
welcome
like.
to submit them.
say them.
To submit them in writing.
Submit it in writing. Okay. I encourage everybody to come to the budget hearing in early December.
Okay, That concludes our agenda item comment. We're gonna now move on to general public comment. We have Alana Hook with, oh, you already, okay, you signed up twice, that's okay. All right, we will move on to, Pauline Braccio for general public comment.
Pauline Braccio, Tomenson Township. There's so many things. I know I'm not going to have enough time because I only have 2 minutes. But one of the things is the gun collection thing. If I were a gun owner, I would be very reticent to turn in my gun because you are defunding the law enforcement and the judges are letting criminals out. So when you have less law enforcement and more crime going on, why wouldn't I want to have a gun in my home to protect myself since I can't really count on defunded law enforcement? So that's one thing. For another, I agree that $500 million, as $500 million for a justice center, for what? The judges are not committing these criminals to jail. A lot of them are on home or house arrest. One sex offender was put on house arrest. Yeah, he stayed in his house and he lured girls in and raped them in his home. Oh, okay, that did a whole lot. And that was done by Del Ritchie, Judge Del Ritchie. Del Ritchie is also the one who wants this super center. What's it going to be called? The Del Ritchie Justice Center? He's got a big ego, and building that building to match is not a good idea. Just think of how many people you could be helping instead of throwing away $500 million on a building that is unnecessary. We just heard about all the need for the people who are homeless and hungry. How much could you do for them? You could do so much more just by cutting back on this building that is totally unnecessary. And I think actually, again, somebody else suggested sheltering people, take a few floors from there and shelter the people right in that building would be a nice idea too. Thank you.
Okay, next we have David Morgan, who would like to provide general public comment on elections.
Oops. From Mayville, Pennsylvania. I have suggestions on how to improve elections. Voting should be done in person on Election Day. Spending on drop boxes and voting by mail can be saved. The money saved can be used to fund the county office workers that support 50 police departments. We learned at last year's budget hearing that county staff assisting 50 police departments were down by more than 30. District Attorney Steele reminded us that the funding by the county is a matter of life and death. Also recommend all voters with absentee ballots go to the post office in person and give their ballots directly to the post office clerks. Recommend timely mailing. Request that the minors about voting from the governor's office go out to all citizens, not just those of the political party of the governor. Offer Montgomery County as a site for debates. The more early debates for all offices, the better. This year, there were none for governor, and the Senate debate was so late, many vote-by-mail voters did not know about the candidates' recent views. During the year, commendations and awards should include the names of all commissioners, no matter what the political party. The order of candidates in the list seen by the voters should be changed each year, so the same party isn't always first. Give credit to all candidates so as to promote fairness and inclusion. Here's a list of the 2022 candidates for governor. And I'm shining a light on each one, same amount of time. Shapiro, Mastriano, Hackenberg, DiGiulio, Solosky. Democratic Party, Republican, Libertarian, Green, Keystone. Election board members should respect and remain impartial in the role. They should not have comments, as we heard in the North Penn Reporter, page 3, during a World Series week, when the election board, when interviewed chair interviewed said in that capacity, of course there we have a hometown candidate for governor, Josh Shapiro, which I think will spark a lot of interest here in Montgomery County. So I think will be good turnout. No other candidate was mentioned.
Mr. Morgan.
Maybe the chair should have things said about
Mr.
each
Morgan.
candidate or nothing.
Mr. Morgan, your time is up.
Let's have a welcoming attitude towards in Montgomery County.
Mr. Morgan.
Okay, next we have Anita.
objection.
Noted.
Go ahead, Ms. Francisco, please.
Next we have Anita Rogers, who
I'm
has
speaking
general
my objection
public
at
comment.
this point.
Your objection, you have a right to object. It's been noted.
Oh, no, you didn't note anything because I didn't say it yet. We've gone through this before, Josh.
Ms. Braccio, and we have gone through this before.
Yes, so why don't you
Before-
learn it?
Ms.
Do you
Braccio,
need private lessons on this?
Ms. Braccio, we've gone over the law.
Okay, all you're doing is sitting
Not
up
to
there
ask
with
security to
eyes
step forward
glazed
and-
over, waiting for that 2-minute mark to run down. Out of respect for you, I will sit down, not for them.
Next we have Anita Rogers, who has general public comment on election and drop boxes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I just wanted to say that I think there should be more uniformity in the counties for voting. Some we have a paper ballot, some have a machine. You have to show your identity, and others, people just come and go. And the other thing is the drop boxes. I think they should be totally eliminated, and mail-in ballots should be limited to people who can prove that they have a medical issue and cannot get out to the polls. People have got lazy with the COVID and the lockups, and people don't go to church, people don't go to vote, and I think people need to get out in person and vote on election day. That is our duty to our country. Thank you.
Next we have Tara Houseel, who has general public comment on the election and drop boxes.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Tara Houseel, Houseal, from Lower Pottsgrove Township. I would also like to state that ballot drop boxes need to be eliminated, and they are a waste of money. I sat for 6 hours to watch the ballot drops. I have witnessed people dropping multiple ballots. I have witnessed the security guards depositing ballots. And I have sat there and noticed that there are only a few people coming. So why can't we have election day on election day instead of election season? And I agree with the other public comments that we work so hard for our money, and I feel like the county is frivolous with their spending. Anita here has worked 2 jobs her whole life to pay her bills and to supply a roof over the heads of her family and her children. And I do without, and I work hard for all of the money that I have. And I feel like wisdom and discernment needs to be bestowed upon the people in charge of our spending, our elections, having ballot drops and big buildings. Who can afford the electricity? Who can afford the fuel? You guys just take, but what about our houses? What about getting to work? What about integrity and honor and honesty and pride? Where is all of that if you don't pay attention, if you're being wasteful, if you're being fraudulent, if you're being deceitful? It's a heart issue, and I just encourage you guys to have wisdom and discernment and a good heart attitude when using our votes and our money to do your bidding. Thank you.
Next we have Ali Sherbany, who has general public comment on housing.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. These are the shareholders. They're shareholders of the county. They contribute the money to the budget, and you guys are using it. And I think it's difficult, right? Because there are needs out there and you have to spend the money on certain things. It just seems like a lot, the courthouse, and we've seen that project. But anyway, good morning, everybody. My name is Ali Sherbini with the Norristown Company. As some of you may know, we're proposing to work with the county to help end homelessness. The partnership would create a supply of high-quality housing solely based on an individual's income. The integrated mixed income environment would meet the expectations of the top earners, but be within reach of anyone willing to work a 40-hour week at $12 an hour. It is a help and hope approach to rehabilitating folks into society. Additionally, this effort would lower federal public spending on housing subsidy, as the partnership would only require a one-time investment, potentially yielding a taxpayer return. I've been presenting this to the county. I've been seeking an opportunity to get it funded. Other mechanisms that have been in place did not work out, so we're trying to look at it in a different way, because there's obviously a need for additional supply of units, housing units that are affordable to people, right, and income-based. It doesn't require ongoing subsidy like Section 8 seems to be the approach, right, because people are delegated to low quality housing and concentrations of poverty, and that's difficult for kids as they grow up, because all you see around you is hopelessness. So this is a way to address that problem without putting public finance in jeopardy. And obviously, I've reached out to the commissioners to have that opportunity to work together in addressing it. And I'm hoping one day, Lord willing, we do. If it doesn't happen at this level, maybe it would happen at another level. But I think it's important to approach these public problems, these issues that do need to be addressed in a sustainable way, like these folks are saying, without overspending, because we're robbing Peter to pay Paul. All of the budgets that we have at a local level, county level, state level, federal level, are running deficits. That's not sustainable. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to a couple of the people that are online to give general public comment. First, we have Adrian Seltzer. You can unmute.
Hello. I just wanted to let you know that I had my hand up for the first section of public comments and was overlooked, or you do have a technical issue. My comments are Adrian Seltzer, Lower Merion. Thank you to the health department. I scheduled my flu shot as you were speaking. I was somewhat dismayed at the response from the commissioners after the heartfelt pleas of the people working to help people who are experiencing homelessness. I would have liked to have heard them direct their finance department to find extra dollars to be able to help them. And so that's my agenda items. Now on to non-agenda items. I am totally willing to help those people who do not understand the election process and to understand it so they understand how their comments do not equate with what the actual process is. Yes, some people have to give ID. If they're the first time voting in their precinct, yes, they have to give ID. Some people, nurses, emergency staff work 12-hour shifts. Getting to the polls on election day can be a struggle, especially if you work far away from home. So there's other issues, and I am more than willing to speak to you about them and why what you're saying is not reasonable. Thank you.
Next, we have Suzanne Stepanek. You can unmute.
Yes, I'm Suzanne Stepanek, and that's S-U-Z-A-N-N-E, not Susan. I'm from Upper Salford Township. Drop boxes should be eliminated for all the aforementioned reasons that speakers before me have said. Since, unfortunately, it appears that likely that we'll have mail-in and drop box ballots in the future, it is imperative that more transparency be part of the process. To those ends, it is necessary that written chain of custody procedures be made available to the public and posted in local newspapers. And since surveillance cameras are already being employed at all Dropbox locations, I am proposing that live feeds from those cameras be made available to the public, similar to Eagle Nest cams and the like. Drop boxes are in public locations, so there is no expectation of privacy, and there should be nothing to hide. In this way, you would have many, many eyes on the activity at the drop boxes, and the public could see for themselves what's taking place there without subjecting themselves in person to potential acts of intimidation and acrimony from county employees, like threats of arrest or having their license plates recorded merely for watching what's happening there, as happened to me and several others earlier this month as we were Dropbox watching. Thank you.
Okay, that concludes our public comment.
Thank you. All right, we will move on to approval of the minutes. I will move to approve the November 3rd, 2022 minutes of the Montgomery County Board of Commissioners meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Lawrence. Any board comment? All right, hearing none, we'll move to a vote. Are there any negative votes? Hearing none, motion carries. All right, next up is to introduce our proposed budget for 2023. And today we will simply be voting on posting that budget for the public to review. Mr. Dorchan? Good morning.
Morning.
Sorry for the delay.
No problem. Thank you. Next slide. Next slide. Okay. Good morning, Commissioners. So today I'm going to outline the proposed 2023 budget for you. I'm going to talk a little bit about 2022 and what our forecast is for year end. But before I do that, today's the first major step in our budget process. We will present the proposed budget, the capital improvement plan, and both documents will be posted out on the county website. They're also going to be available here in the Commissioner's office and at the Norristown Public Library, along with this presentation that I'm going to make today. So it'll all be out once this meeting concludes. That will follow with two public hearings on December 1st. We have a morning session at 10 a.m. and then an evening session at 5:30 to follow, with adoption scheduled for the last board meeting in December, which is December 15th. Next slide. So before I get into the budget itself, I think we have to take a step back and particularly look over the last 3 years of what's happened. And I have it labeled here, the perfect storm. It really is when you think back on how things unfolded since 2020. We all know we dealt with the pandemic. It hit the county hard. It hit the country hard, the whole world hard, right? We had shut down of businesses, scaling back of county operations. So how did that impact us? Well, it impacted us in a number of ways. It impacted us on our revenues, obviously not operating the way that we normally would. Our revenues fell off. And when you look back in time and you look at that base of 2019 at our overall revenues compared to what we're projecting for 2023, we're still off on those levels. Not in every category, but in some of the ones that you would think that relate directly to the operations of the county. So then the follow in 2021, Storm Ida hit. We wouldn't have expected that. And it devastated the county, with the record-breaking flooding and the tornado that touched down. The county had an extremely strong response to the storm immediately, and obviously the cost to do that, clean up, managing displaced residents, and the recovery overall is roughly in the range of about $24 million that came out of the general fund reserves, which that's what it's there for, but that's a large number that was unanticipated. Next slide, please. So to follow in 2022, and not to be expected, this all began in the beginning of the year with the invasion of the Ukraine. We obviously have had negative impacts. in the global economy, and we're feeling it. There's been significant disruptions in the supply chain. Fuel prices doubled, and on hot, inflation at this point over the last 12 months, is at record highs, and we're seeing it in expenses across the board on the operating side and on the capital side. We're talking about double-digit increases in some of the major categories that you could imagine. Next slide, please. Just a quick snapshot of the CPI for urban wage earners and clerical workers, which is a good indicator. You can see going all the way back to 2008, in 21's when we really started to feel the effect of inflation, and even up through this date, we're still up in a high range of 8%. Next slide, please. So another key area that we have been challenged with in all government entities across the country is obviously with our workforce. At the moment, we're experiencing one of the highest levels of vacancy in recent years. I would say, at least maybe historically, back 10 to 20 years. I haven't gone back that far, but right now, we're vacant. We have about 328 positions vacant, which is 12% of the budgeted workforce full-time. We also have a number of part-time positions which supplement our operations that have been extremely challenging to fill and have not been filled in the last 2 years. Some of the key areas where we're seeing it are in the ranks of correctional officers, deputy sheriffs, prosecutors, public defenders, the youth center counselors, and various departments across the human health services. So these shortages have obviously significantly created pressures on the county delivering critical county services. And one, this is an area that we've been dealing with for, at least the last 18 months, and the trend seems to continue. So it is a major problem that we're dealing with. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to turn to the budget itself, and I'm going to start with 2022, and this is our year-end projection. As you can see, we started the year with an adopted budget that was projecting a deficit of $12 million that we were going to close the gap with transfers in from assigned fund balance for future pension costs and debt service costs. And at that point, that would have gotten us right into the high end of our range, 20% for our fund balance policy. On an actual basis, and there are a lot of ups and downs that have occurred in 2022, right now we're projecting an overall surplus of about $15 million. If that's to occur, we're still within the high end of the fund balance policy range at about 19.9%. There are some pass-through grant revenues that have been flowing through our budgets over the last couple years that are starting to level out. In this particular projection, as a good example, there's $51 million that are included both on the revenue and expense side for early learning, for the Early Learning Resource Center. And their services, that money's passed through. It basically comes through the county, goes out to the daycare centers. On the expense side, there are savings embedded in these numbers. Personnel costs, primarily for the reasons that we just talked about, are down by about $8.4 million. Debt service, about $4 million, and that primarily related to the new bond issue that we completed this year that got off the ground a little bit later than we thought. Also, our 911 fund subsidy from the general fund is not required in 2022. There's been significant budgetary savings, not for all good reasons, in that operation, primarily from personnel and a high level of vacancies with the 911 operators. So turning to the 23 budget, as you can see, the budget is projecting a structural deficit of about $18.6 million. Our revenues are up by about 5%, that adds about $25 million. On the expense side, we're at about $32 million higher, which is roughly 6.4%. The revenues that you're seeing here do include a proposed real estate tax increase, which I'll talk about in a little bit. That adds about a little over $19 million of new revenue, so that's in the numbers. Even with that, we're still projecting a deficit. In the personnel side, it includes new personnel costs and cost containment in some of our functional areas, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. Next slide, please. So how do we balance the budget? And this is the proposed recommendation, and it includes a combination of steps here. The first we just spoke about, the real estate tax increase. An 8% real estate tax increase would take our millage rate for county operations up to 4.237 mils. That generates roughly 19.6 million of net new real estate tax revenue. But even with that, we still have a structural deficit that we have to deal with. So the next step that we could use is to appropriate assigned fund balance, which was put away on the balance sheet in 2020. If you go back and you look at our audited financial statements, we set aside about $20 million for future debt service costs. So there's still assigned fund balance remaining that can be utilized in 2023. Here we're recommending that we would draw down about $5 million if needed, if everything worked out the way that we thought, and help to offset that $18 million deficit. Next slide, please. So that leaves us with about $13.6 million more dollars to deal with. The recommendation is that we would draw down on a budgetary basis, unassigned fund balance, that would actually get us balanced out, and we'll look at that after I just make one more comment. So if that occurs and this all works out the way that we have projected here, our 22 projections come in the way that we think, and the budget unfolds the way it's been proposed, it will keep our fund balance reserves within the 18 to 20% range, but we're going to be at the very low end, just slightly over 18%. But it does meet the fund balance policy goal of the county. Next slide, please. So this clearly walks you through it. As I said, the revenues that are in the proposed budget include the new real estate tax revenue. That's number one. Number two would be the use of assigned fund balance, $5 million, and then finally, if needed, the use of unassigned fund balance would get us down to about 92.9 million of overall unrestricted fund balance that would be left. And as I said, that's right around 18%. It's not where we exactly would want to be. Our target would be more like the middle of that range or the higher end of the range, but I think that, with good budget management, we can, if nothing unusual comes up, we can outperform the budget just by some of the things that we typically do. We're not trying to spend the entire budget. We try to manage it well. So we're hopeful that that would be the same case here with how this is being presented. Next slide, please. So overall, when you look at our revenues, and this is a topic we've discussed in recent years. When you look at our breakdown, half of the county's general fund revenue comes from real estate taxes, and it's just roughly over 50%. As I said, we have a lot of these grant revenues that were larger that were coming down through the state and into our budgets in past years. That's starting to level out, but typically we are right around the 50% range, as you can see. Next slide, please. So if a 8% real estate tax millage rate was approved, this is how it would impact our single-family homes here in the county. And the first point's important. When you look at the overall single-family dwellings within the county, about 61% of them have a market value that's less than $414,000. That's based on current market projections. Those households, on average, would pay approximately $479 a year of county real estate tax towards operations. That would be an increase of $35 annually over 2022. When you look at all the single-family dwellings in the county, which is, I think, roughly 260 or 270,000, on average, the market value of those homes is roughly about $431,000. That group, on average, would pay about $720 $22, which would be an increase of about 53 from 22 to 23. Next slide, please. And that you can see here depicted with the rates that are currently in place and the proposed millage rates with the current market information. And that's based on common level ratios that were put out in the middle of this year. Next slide, please. So, we're talking a lot about real estate. It's extremely important to the county, particularly because it represents 50% of the general fund budget. And we track monthly what's going on in the housing market. This is the most recent update as of the end of October. What you see here is on our side assessment growth. So this comes from new development that's coming online. You can see that through October, the county's real estate assessment base has increased by 0.66%. At this time last year, it was about 0.80%. There still will be some ups and downs between now and the end of the year, but we are trending right around our budget level that we had incorporated into the 2022 budget. Next slide, please. So looking at the housing market data, starting with the number of properties sold, it's down significantly, 14% when you compare to this time last year. So for the first 10 months of this year versus the first 2 months of last year. Median price, which, you know, when you compare at this snapshot in time, is up, but what we've seen is in the last 3 months, consecutive declines of the median sales price in Montgomery County. It was up over about 400,000, and it continues to come down. And this is happening, you know, throughout our region, which you'll see on the next slide. So this shows you in the light blue, that's Montgomery County, and then the gray is the indicators of the 5-county region. So, you know, for instance, the number of properties sold, you know, we were down 14%. When you look at the 5-county regions, same thing, they're down 14%. Median price, we're a little bit stronger when you compare to the snapshot in time versus the other counties. And then the others all speak for themselves. I think it's painting the picture of what we thought was going to happen when the mortgage rates went up the way they did. They've more than doubled, they're over 7%, and the housing market's slowing. So we have to continue to pay close attention to it. I think the positive thing is that we're still seeing assessment growth month to month, and we'll continue to monitor that and report out if we see any negative swings to it. Next slide, please. So when you look at the overall revenues in the 23 budget versus 22, and these are the variances highest to lowest, you know, obviously the first is the real estate revenue that we talked about. The next few line items are grant revenue driven, and they typically have an expense offset. So when you look at, you know, if you took all the revenue line items here that were related to some form of grant, when we look at the next slide, you're going to see, you know, there's an expenditure offset to it. Could you just go back real quick, Kelly? Yeah, thank you. But I did want to point out a couple things on this slide. So one of the things that has been extremely beneficial to us is investment income. You can see that it's projected to increase by, you know, almost 1.8 million. That's primarily because of the short-term Fed rate increases that have occurred in recent months. We've been able to take advantage of that by investing our liquid funds in, you know, investments that we're getting returns in the 3% range at the moment. And, you know, if there continues to be rate increases, we'll take, you know, advantage of that immediately and, you know, see a little bit more on the investment income side. But this is all projected out based on what is happening today. Obviously, you know, the rates could go up, they could come down, you know, at some point next year a little bit, you know, depending on what happens with the economy. But it's been helpful. Also, gaming revenue is another growing revenue that, you know, is above what we would have anticipated. You can see on a budget-to-budget basis, that's up by 800,000, you know, almost 26%. Next slide, please. So turning to expenses, as I said, the overall budget's about 531 million. These are our core functional areas or service areas, and you can see that human health services, which is primarily driven, by the grant revenue side, is the largest piece of the pie. But following that, we have the correctional aspects of our business, which includes, the correctional facility and the youth center and shelter, and then judicial. I will point out debt service, which has, been a bit of a pressure point for us, is really in a good range when we look at some of the benchmarks that Moody's looks at. And 12% is, and it's been noted in our credit reviews that that is a manageable range for the size of our county. Next slide, please. So turning to some of the variances on the expenditure side, this is budget to budget, 23 proposed to 22 budget. I spoke about personnel costs. Some of the things that are embedded into this budget include some strong initiatives to try and stabilize our workforce, and I'm going to explain some of those. But that is one of our key problems right now that we've been dealing with, and we'll talk about a little bit more how this is being addressed. As I said, there's an offset to grant revenues, so typically the expense side of it's in provider services and consulting services other. So when you net those two numbers together, it's roughly an increase of $7 million. If you went back to the grant line items and sum those up, it's around the same number. So they almost have an offset, although not every grant revenue, there is some percentage of county match in most of the grant revenues, except for some of the one-time stuff that we've been receiving in recent years. I will note a couple things in here. You see the general fund subsidy to the 911 fund. We did have it budgeted in 22, and I said that we won't need that in the projection. We're not going to have to provide a subsidy for 2023 as well, based on some of the savings that have been achieved in that fund over the last few years. So I think that we'll be able to get away with one more year without having to contribute to it. But probably in the future that'll come back online again. So debt service, obviously there's an increase there. We programmed in $5 million of new interest costs relating to the new money bond issue that's anticipated for 2023. That's that is a projection depending on the sizing of that bond issue and the timing of it. That number could be lower. Next slide, please. So, as I mentioned, the personnel costs up by $15 million. It is programmed in at full staffing levels for 2023 to address our current service levels. That's typically how we budget. Also, one of the bigger cost drivers that we have to deal with from year to year is our annual contribution to the pension plan. That is up by $3.1 million on a budget-to-budget basis. Another key area are employee health care costs. That's the employee health care insurance and so forth that we provide for our employees. That had remained fairly stable between 2019 and 2021. The county, over those years, implemented a number of cost containment programs, which really helped us where others were experiencing, cost increases in, probably the 5% range if you went out and looked at our market. However, with inflation, we have experienced cost increases in 22 and have some programmed in for 2023. And that's to be expected with what's going on with inflation right now. It's obviously impacting medical services as well. Next slide, please. So the budget does also include a 4% base wage increase that would be effective January 1st, 2023 for all non-contractual employees. It includes contractual employee base wage increases that for the union groups that have contracts in place for next year. We have one that doesn't, so those numbers are included here as well. Next slide, please. also included. You'll recall that back in around 2017, the county had completed a compensation study and then implemented that over a 2-year period. Since then, and at the time, it was to bring our job pay grades in line with our peer counties in the market. And, I think that it was very strong effort on the county's part, and it was successful, at that time. But a lot has changed since then, and we know that. We just know that by some of the positions that are, some of the ones that are in those high vacancy rates, and we look at what other counties are paying. So we've fallen behind, and it is time to update that study and then implement any recommendations that come out of it. That study's underway and expected to be completed next year, and final recommendations will be brought to the board's attention for consideration. Also, there's some moderate new positions that have been added. And when I say moderate, not many when you look at the size of our overall employee base. Many of them are grant funded, so they have a very small offset, or maybe not at all, from the general fund. Turning back to the pension, as I said, it's up, and a lot of that is driven by what's going on right now in the financial markets. Our pension plan assets are invested, in fixed income and stocks, and, the market's been very volatile. So at this time of the year, our actuaries, do an estimate for us, and it is based on that information now at a higher amount than we would have anticipated. However, the budget does include 100% funding, which the board had a goal of implementing that over the last 3 years, and this would be the 3rd year that the county would contribute 100%. And this realizes and addresses the county's long-term pension obligation for our current employees and retirees. Next slide, please. Turning to the capital side and our debt service side. So you're going to hear in a few minutes from RJ a little bit more about the capital improvement program, but we do have that framed out. And right now, on a budget basis, it roughly looks like we may have to borrow approximately $149 million to fund the capital plan. We'll be evaluating that, probably in the beginning of next year to really get a better handle on what our cash flow and our spending is in that capital plan. But right now, it's projected to add, new general fund debt service in '23. And as I mentioned earlier, we have programmed in about $5 million so that we have some capacity depending on what the size is of that bond issue. In addition to that, we're projecting a new money bond issue, roughly about $15 million for the road and bridge capital projects. 100% of that debt service is paid by the motor vehicle registration fee fund, so that won't have any impact on the general fund. And we did not borrow for that program when we did the bond issue this year because we still had bond proceeds that were available to us. Next slide, please. So turning to cost containment and cost avoidance, I think that some of the things that we forget about are cost containment items that were completed in prior years, right, that are embedded in our budget base. Like we spoke about the healthcare items. There's been a number of programs that have been implemented and continue to save us, in certain areas on the healthcare side. But here are some that are very clear that are embedded into the space, particularly with this budget. So this budget does propose the elimination of 20 vacant correctional officer positions, and that's effective January 1st, 2023. Also, you'll recall back in 2020, the Board of Commissioners approved a new 3-year agreement that expires in 2023 for our electricity costs. Basically, at that time, we locked into record low pricing, which, today, is almost double if you looked at today's market, but we're still covered through the end of next year. When you go back and take a look at it, that's roughly about 1.7 or 1.2 million of overall cost savings to the county's budget. the subsidy to the 911 fund. As I mentioned, we've been able to save there by not having to make a contribution to the fund. That's mainly because of, as I said, the performance of the fund, both on the revenue side and the expense side. But another area that I think gets lost in all this is debt service costs and some of the savings that have been achieved, over the last 5 years. We did a number of bond refundings when the market was really good, and most of those savings have been plotted out, over the years ahead. So when you look back at the multiple bond issues that we did, we had targeted about $700,000 for this year of debt service savings. So it's embedded in the number. It's something that, we would be paying if we didn't refi those bonds the way we did. And then on the part-time personnel side, I had mentioned earlier that that's been an area that we've been challenged to fill positions, but we've also had a reduction across the organization. That's projected to save about $600,000 of budgetary savings in 2023. Next slide, please. So just to wrap up on cost containment, when the county's bond credit rating was upgraded to a AAA back in 2018, and we were a AA prior to that, we obviously had a number of bond issues that occurred after that, roughly 4, I think. So we priced as a AAA with those bond issues, and we plan next year, to maintain the AAA and price the same way. We're one of 111 counties across the country that have a AAA rating by Moody's. So what does that mean? It means that when we go to market, people want our bonds, investors want our bonds, and they're going to pay a competitive price for it. So we typically price very well when we go to market. So the value of the AAA can be quantified, and when we look back at it and we go over those bond issues and we look at what the market did that day and we look how a AA priced versus how we priced and how a AAA is pricing today and how we expect it to next year, we're probably looking at about $10 million of savings that have been achieved as a result of the AAA credit rating, and that's substantial. Next slide, please. So just turning to the ARPA fund and its budget, I wanted to just highlight a few things. As you know, that the county's already approved its ARPA recovery plan, which provides multiple years of funding. But on a budget basis, this is what it looks like. We think that approximately $70 million will be spent out of that fund in 2023. One of the highlights here that I would make is, investment earnings on those funds, with the rates where they are, we are achieving higher levels of investment income too. So that's a positive. Next slide, please. You can just roll through these, Kelly. These are just really descriptions of the ARPA program areas. And we'll move to capital. Thank you. So the capital fund, RJ's going to talk a little bit more about the details of the capital, but at a high level, I'll just walk through the numbers quickly. It's projecting overall about $270 million of spending. 149 of it would come from bond proceeds. That would be our new money bond issue. 15 million of it's covered. That's the motor vehicle registration capital projects. And then another 25 million comes from federal and state grant sources, and other funding sources represent about 6.5 million. So that's the snapshot right now as being proposed for 2023. And I'm going to invite RJ Griffin up, our capital budget manager, to walk through the 5-year plan.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. As Dean mentioned, my name is RJ Griffin, and I am the county's capital budget manager. I'm here to give a brief overview of the capital improvement program and the capital budget. To begin with, I want to touch on what a capital improvement program is. At its most fundamental level, the capital improvement program aims to improve the quality of life of our citizens through strategic investments in physical infrastructure, including the county's roads, bridges, facilities, and land. Next slide, please. As Dean just mentioned, in FY '23, the capital fund budget is approximately $270 million. The capital portfolio is made up of approximately 150 projects that really run the gamut across the board, across all of our departments. And I want to touch on a few projects outside of the county campus plan. The majority of our projects do fall in program areas that are not the county campus plan, and I want to shed some light on those. So the county's Assets and Infrastructure Department represents approximately 27% of the 2023 capital budget. Within Assets and Infrastructure, there are several large projects. County facility improvements account for approximately $38 million. Our road and bridge portfolio accounts for approximately $20 million. The county's parks and trails, $12 million. And the county will begin working with Norristown to improve their library, $3 million dedicated in 2023, and substantially more in the out years. The county's planning commission represents approximately 19% of the 2023 capital budget. The planning commission includes projects such as the Ridge Pike Improvement Project, which I see Matt Edmonds is here, a pretty substantial sum, $30 million, as well as new development in our trail projects, which is approximately $17 million, and the SEPTA capital contribution of $4 million to keep mass transit running out here in the county. So now looking over the 5-year horizon, which is encompassed by the capital improvement program. Similar to the 2023 capital budget, the 5-year plan encompasses a wide array of projects in all program areas. If you take a look at the pie chart on the screen, I want to call your attention to public safety, which will be seeing a substantial sum, approximately $27 million over 5 fiscal years. Next slide, please. So within the capital improvement program, the 5-year program, some of the longer term investments include the $27 million I just mentioned to public safety, which will go to replace the burn building out there, which all local fire departments use as a way to train. Additionally, the operations center, where the 911 operators are located, will be renovated, as well as the public safety training center, where many of our local police officers go to train. Additionally, the correctional facility will begin a 6-year project to renew and improve their roof. Our sheriffs will get new vehicles as they requested. We'll begin the rollout of electric vehicle chargers here in the county. The corridor building is under construction and will continue to be built. And the archives facility will also be built on our Eagleville campus. So how will we pay for the 2023 capital fund budget? As you can see on the screen, and this pie chart shows that there are a number of revenue sources. As Dean mentioned, capital fund bond proceeds is the most significant portion, which is on par with other large municipalities throughout the country. But also federal grants, motor vehicle registration, and state grants will be used to fund projects. So now moving on to the transparency portal. This is a slide I'm really excited about. About 3 years ago, the board began this initiative to really put our book in a virtual form online so that all county residents will have access to see how their dollars are being spent on the capital portfolio. As I mentioned, it's approximately 150 projects, all of which will have their own individual webpage. Our departments did a great job of putting together those web pages, and I encourage everyone to view them. They'll be live in the coming week before the holiday. And each of those web pages includes an interactive map, as well as a revenue and budget table for each project, so you can really dig in and see where your tax dollars are going. And as I mentioned, I think a lot of the capital portfolio is overlooked at times by the public, so I really, really would encourage everyone to visit that portal once it goes live. That concludes my presentation. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. Picture here again is the burn building, which will be getting replaced, as well as the correctional facility, that'll be getting a new roof, 2 major projects in the 5-year capital improvement program. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask.
Mr. Deschamps, thank you, Mr. Griffin. Do you have any other additional
No,
comments?
that concludes our presentation of the proposed
Okay,
budget.
great. Let me put a motion on the floor, and then we can share some comments and questions. I will move that the proposed budget for Montgomery County fiscal year 2023 shall be posted to the county's website, and a printed copy shall be available for inspection and review by the public. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Lawrence. Well, I'll start with a few comments. First, I just want to thank Mr. Dortone and Mr. Griffin for that very thorough presentation of sort of where we've been and where we're going. And I really want to encourage members of the public to take a look at this website that Mr. Griffin talked about. They've put a tremendous amount of work into that site. And I know, understandably, people often have questions about some of the things that we're building and working on around the county. And so this will be a great way to get those questions answered. As we introduce this proposed budget for 2023, I want to emphasize that, like many families and businesses have experienced over the past year, the county is facing significant pressure this year on our budget. As any of the workers and families watching today's meeting know, a budget is a reflection of priorities. And the budget we are proposing today reflects some very important ones for our county. Ones that have become more challenging to achieve as we continue to navigate the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, the destruction of homes by Hurricane Ida, and inflation, leading to rising prices for goods and services, all while investing in our county workforce and maintaining our strong financial footing, something critical to attracting jobs and investment to our growing region. Through strong financial management practices and oversight, we are projecting that we will end 2022 with a $15 million surplus. This prudent management allows us to continue to invest in service delivery to our 856,000 constituents, ensure our workforce can do its job to serve our residents, and continue to rebuild critical infrastructure while keeping the impact to our taxpayers in line with inflation. This is despite enormous upward pressure on supply costs, wages, and additional expenses as we continue to serve a growing county population and respond to events like Hurricane Ida and the ongoing impacts of COVID-19. Because of our strong fund balance, we were able to spend over $24 million to respond to Hurricane Ida, including providing hotels, food, and transportation to residents whose homes were lost or damaged. We removed debris in impacted communities, and we repaired bridges and roadways. All that work was paid for by county funds. We hope to secure FEMA reimbursement for most of that work, but that has yet to be confirmed, and no funds have yet to be received. In preparing the 2023 proposed budget, we have identified $8.2 million in reduced expenses and costs. Examples include refinancing debt, reducing part-time hours and travel costs, and electricity savings of nearly $1.2 million. A substantial savings in the proposed 2023 budget has been realized by our efforts to match our workforce to the needs of our constituents by eliminating long-standing unfilled vacancies, saving $1.3 million, and adding a small number of critically needed new positions in our Office of Children and Youth, our Office of Public Health, in food resource allocation and coordination, the District Attorney's Office, data management, and assets and infrastructure. This continual examination of our workforce and aligning our team with constituent priorities is essential work that helps us operate more efficiently while providing quality service. This proposed budget also maintains our fund balance policy to make sure that we have healthy reserves as we continue to operate during a time of volatile markets and future economic uncertainty. And very importantly, have the cash resources to respond to emergencies like Hurricane Ida. These fiscally responsible practices have enabled us to earn the highest rating from Moody's, Earlier this year, the county achieved a rating of AAA from Moody's for the 5th year in a row. This is a testament to the work of our finance team and adhering to our sound financial management practices. As you heard a few minutes ago, Montgomery County is one of only 111 counties out of 3,143 counties nationwide with this prestigious designation. By securing the highest possible credit rating, Montgomery County is able to borrow at the lowest interest rates possible, the money that we need to invest in the public infrastructure and amenities that attract both residents and businesses to Montgomery County. These projects include critically needed repairs to our county-owned roads and bridges. When I took office in 2015, we inherited 62 county-owned bridges in poor condition. After enabling the $5 motor vehicle fee to help fund our county-owned roads and bridge repairs, I'm proud to say we have reduced the number of poor condition bridges by half since 2017. We have also repaved 90% of county-owned roads using those funds. It is our goal to have the remaining poor condition bridges repaired by 2027, and funding has been allocated for this purpose. These capital dollars also fund improvements and upgrades to our parks and trails and historic sites that are visited by over 2 million visitors each year. And finally, capital invested by the county continues to create local, good-paying jobs right here in our community. Construction of the Montgomery County Justice Center and a greatly expanded Hancock Square Park is underway right across the street. This project is on time, on budget, and on target to contribute to the transformation of Main Street and downtown Norristown, while at the same time allowing the county to consolidate much of our workforce in downtown Norristown, making conducting business with the county more convenient for constituents and greatly reducing costly space currently being leased by the county. This proposed budget also plans for the ongoing administration and distribution of new state and federal grants received by the county. One great example of how we have been able to equitably administer and distribute these funds is through our Recovery Office's management of our American Rescue Plan Act funds. ARPA funds are helping us manage through continued uncertainty while also helping us invest in our community directly with a focus on those most impacted by COVID. Earlier this year, we announced our plan to distribute the $161 million that the county received. And you can see that most of the funding has gone to support our residents directly. And I would just note a significant piece is going to build new housing for our workforce and with a focus on affordability. We have used only a small portion of our ARPA funds to support county operations, while the majority is going to our community. I'm proud to say that we have multiple grant programs being introduced in the coming weeks and months, like the Small Business Grant Program I mentioned in my opening remarks this morning, which demonstrate our commitment to putting these dollars to work in our communities. Despite this year's challenges, this proposed budget maintains the county's sound financial footing while continuing to deliver the high-quality services and supports that our families, local businesses, and workforce expect from their county government. I intend to vote in support of posting the proposed 2023 budget and capital improvement program and look forward to feedback from our constituents. And now I will turn it over to Commissioner Lawrence.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Dortone. Thank you, Mr. Griffin, for that in-depth presentation. You know, I recognize as well that inflation is impacting all of us, and we all need to keep costs down to pay our bills. And I've worked with our leadership team and our finance team to ensure that we are looking at all expenses and cutting costs wherever we can. And I will continue to push them to do so. However, there's still a level of service we must provide, and we will continue to provide those services as efficiently as possible while meeting our growing county needs. The 2023 proposed budget and capital improvement plan continues our commitments to investing in efficient service delivery, our infrastructure, and most importantly, our workforce. This proposed budget outlines all the capital projects we are committed to for the long term through a multi-year capital plan. We continue to invest in high-quality public places for our residents while also protecting open space. For example, this budget continues our funding to upgrade and improve the Norristown Library to make it a welcoming space for the community. We also have funding allocated to the Chester Valley Trail, which will finish the eastern portion of the trail, bringing it into Norristown to provide a connection to the Schuylkill River Trail. The Cross County Trail is also included in this proposed budget to eventually complete a 17.5-mile trail to connect to Willow Grove and into Bucks County, providing a major north-south route through the heart of Montgomery County. And finally, this capital budget proposes an increase in funds to support farmland preservation so we can continue to preserve open space countywide. The proposed 2023 budget and capital plan also addresses our aging infrastructure. Construction is nearly complete on our Department of Public Safety's brand new warehouse to hold its critical fleet vehicles and be better prepared to respond to emergencies events. And as we've heard, we are having those emergency events. Proposed capital funding also supports an upgrade to their emergency communications radio system. Funding is also committed to continue the construction of our new coroner's facility to support our county's growing population and changing demographic trends. Construction will be complete in early 2023 on a new county archives facility. Once the county archives are moved to its new home, it will save the county more than $400,000 a year because the lease at the old facility is no longer necessary. And the 2023 capital budget also has funds to replace the Perkiomen Trail Bridge for trail users and continue our investments to rebuild Ridge Pike. All of these improvements will benefit residents and visitors to our county for years to come. But services are not delivered, trails are not built, and buildings aren't maintained without the talented, dedicated public servants who work for the residents of Montgomery County. As you've heard, like many organizations nationwide, the county has not been immune to high vacancy rates in many of our critical service delivery areas. These vacancies have made many difficult jobs even harder over the last couple of years, and with wages increasing in many sectors in our region, filling public sector roles has become even more difficult in this current economic climate. And that's why it's very important to me that the 2023 proposed budget considers several needed investments in our workforce, including a 4% base wage increase for our staff, funds to complete a new compensation study to make sure we have pay parity with our peer counties, and a plan to ensure pay equity within our ranks. It's important and critical to us that we have a trained, quality, diverse workforce to provide the vast array of services our county residents depend upon. From our housing team that has distributed millions in federal rental assistance to residents so they can stay securely housed, to our park teams that provide a clean, safe, quality experience at our parks and historic sites, to our planning commission that is looking forward to the future with the creation of our Monco 2050 plan. Our team has been working hard to support our residents, and I could go on with the departments. In these difficult economic times, it is essential that we retain our current quality workforce while continuing to recruit quality staff to fill our vacancies. That's why I'm committed to making this investment in our workforce and ensure that we stay competitive with our regional counties. Through good financial management, we can provide all these services and infrastructure to our residents with a minimal increased impact on individual taxpayers. I know any increases to our residents is difficult in these times, and I continue to push our staff and all of us to ensure that we are reducing expenses in every way, but also meeting the growing demands of our county. I intend to vote in support of posting the proposed 2023 budget and capital improvement program.
Okay, the 2023 proposed budget before us reflects higher spending, higher borrowing, higher debt, and also higher taxes. And it's also been displayed that there's a structural budget deficit of $18.6 million. So clearly there's a spending problem here in Montgomery County. Now we can blame Hurricane Ida, we can blame the Ukrainian invasion and that impact on high gas prices and high inflation, but ultimately we have out of control spending in Montgomery County. And that's reflected in the budget deficit, and it's also reflected in the long history of property tax increases in Montgomery County. In 2016, the property owners in Montgomery County faced a property tax increase. In 2017, property owners faced essentially a new real estate tax with the Montgomery County Community College, another tax increase. In 2021, property owners face another property tax increase. In 2022, yet again, property owners face another property tax increase. And here in 2023, again, property owners will face another higher real estate property tax increase. So that speaks for itself. There's a pattern where we're increasing property taxes because we're simply spending too much money in Montgomery County. The glaring one is the capital budget. 42% of the 2023 proposed capital spending goes to the county campus plan, nearly a $500 million project that I've been critical of for several years since I first took office. And the 5-year capital plan, the campus plan reflects 36% of the capital funding. And you talk about employee retention and the need to have competitive wage rates with surrounding counties so we retain county employees so we can deliver the services needed to conduct county government. The county employees, if you're a sheriff deputy, they look out the window and they see a couple 1,000-foot in the air crane with steel beams across the air, and they are wanting higher salary, or they're leaving. And you see that with the volume of employees that leave Montgomery County. They don't care if that allocation funds in the capital plan, whether it falls under the operating budget. At the end of the day, it's still a county expense. And ultimately, 51% of the budget is funded through real estate taxes. Same thing with prosecutors in the district attorney's office. They look out the window, they see the cranes out the window, that's a county expense. So we have to prioritize spending, and the cost of the Justice Center project is entirely too expensive. And that's why we see this pattern of tax increases. And on the operating budget, I'll give you a simple example. Right in the back of the room, the Health and Human Services contract vendor list. There's an expense. It might seem minor. $39,916 to Aclamo for COVID-19 outreach and education services. We're now a couple years into COVID. And after shutdowns, lockdowns, mandates, mask wearing, children not having in-person education, the general public is well aware of COVID. They know what it is. We don't need to spend $39,000. I don't care if it's grant funding, which is at the end of the day is tax dollars, or whatever else it is, to educate people at this point on what COVID is. And the millions of dollars that we spent on similar types of programs over the last 2 years has added up very significantly. And it leads us to this point where we're raising property taxes yet again. And I'm the sole voice on this board. Everything else is lockstep, unanimous vote, it's going to go through. I am the only commissioner on the board that says things like this. And it's important that it has to stop, because we can't keep borrowing money at historic levels, and we can't increase property taxes year after year. And people are struggling. We do have high gas prices. We do have high inflation. We do have homelessness that we're hearing at all these meetings. We have hunger insecurity problems. Well, increasing property taxes is not the solution. What that does is it grows government, and it says government knows best, and we'll take care of it. And obviously, it's not working. We saw that in the presentations at the beginning of this board meeting when it comes to homelessness and meeting the needs to help those facing hunger. It doesn't work. What we need is the general public to keep their own money and do what they find is best with it. And that is not reflected in this budget. So practically every year since I've been a commissioner, I oppose the proposal because it reflects the higher taxes, and also the general budget when it's finalized. So I am not supporting this proposed 2023 budget, and if it reflects higher spending, higher borrowing, and higher taxes, I will oppose it when it comes time next month. So we will need a roll call vote.
All right, so just to reiterate, the county's proposed 2023 operating and capital improvement plan will be posted online on the county's finance page. That's at www.montcopa.org/finance, and will be available for public review in person at our 1 Montgomery Plaza location here in Norristown, as well as the Norristown Public Library. There'll be 2 public hearings for public participation. They will be hybrid, so you can come in person or you can come in online. And they are Thursday, December the 1st at 10 a.m. and then again Thursday, December the 1st at 5:30 p.m. And then the commissioners are scheduled to vote on the budget for adoption at our regularly scheduled board meeting on December the 15th at 10 a.m. And with that, Ms. Washington, if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Chair Kush.
To post the budget, so everyone is aware. Aye.
Vice Chair Lawrence.
And opposed.
Did we lose her, Kelly? Ms. Washington?
Vice Chair Lawrence.
Aye.
Commissioner Gale.
Opposed.
Motion carries 2-1. All right, we will move on to resolutions. Ms. Silver.
Hello, Commissioners. I have 2 quick presentations for you today for 2 different resolutions to request. The first one is a request to also post publicly an amendment to the Office of Housing and Community Developments and Counties 2019 Annual Action Plan. Next slide, please. So with this resolution, the County of Montgomery County will propose to amend our 2019 Annual Action Plan, which includes Community Development Block Grant CARES Act funding, or CDBG CV funding. When we received these funds back in 2020, there was a little over $5 million in CDBG CV funds, and we went through a substantial amendment process then to allocate those funds with different services related to responding to the COVID-19 crisis for low to moderate income persons, as well as those experiencing homelessness. I'm here today to request a public posting of another amendment, which is necessary because under our citizen participation plan, any decision to make changes in the use of CDBG funds from one eligible activity to another must be posted publicly for public comment for a period of 30 days. Next slide, please. So we have allocated and spent quite a bit of our CDBG CV funding. Today, I'm requesting a public notice to move $200,000 out of permanent housing development and acquisition and into support for the Youth Street outreach. The reason we're doing this is a few reasons, really. The vast majority of set-aside money that we have set aside for acquisition and development of permanent housing has already been spent. Plus, we have gained new dollars through $5.5 million in American Rescue Plan Act funding, or ARPA, to develop and acquire more housing for affordability, as well as the home ARP funding, which is another $5 million. And those have longer spending periods, and development projects, as we know, can tend to take a long time. And then at the same time, the CDBG CV funding, we're running close up to a spending deadline as it is. So this small portion, since we've already spent quite a bit of money in permanent housing for persons experiencing homelessness under this funding source, we're requesting a small portion be moved into this Youth Street outreach heading into 2023, because we know that the need is still there, the ongoing impact of COVID-19 for those experiencing homelessness. In 2020, there were 149 youth who were experiencing homelessness due to some sort of impact during COVID, and in 2022, it was 233 youth. Without identified funding going into 2023, the service may not be sustainable, so we think between this needing to be spent at a sooner time frame and the ongoing need, that this is a good fit for a switch, while using those other funding sources I mentioned for housing acquisition and development. So in order to obtain the views of residents, public agencies, and other interested parties, this proposed amendment will be posted publicly on the Montco, PA website that you see here up on the screen. You can also just find us by Googling Montgomery County Office of Housing and Community Development. That will be up by the end of the day. Comments will be accepted and instructions will be on there. You can submit them via mail or email. Comments will be received through December 23rd, and we will also have a virtual public hearing with instructions on the county website, the county calendar, how to register and attend. That public virtual hearing about this moving of the $200,000 will be on December 7th at 12 noon. So with this resolution, we're just posting for public comment.
Thank you. I will move that the proper county officials, in accordance with the authority conferred by law, subject to the approval of the county solicitor, hereby authorize the amendment to the 2019 Annual Action Plan, including the attached list of proposed activities for funding under the CDBG-CV3 program, to be available for public comment for a period of 30 days beginning November the 23rd, 2022, and ending on December 23rd, 2022, with a public hearing to be conducted through virtual means as necessary on December the 7th at 12 p.m. Be it further resolved that public comment will be accepted by the Board of Commissioners until December 23rd, 2022, with final action on the proposed amendment to the 2019 Annual Action Plan to be taken on January 5th, 2023. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Lawrence. Ms. Silver, I just want to clarify for the public, given our conversation here today, we are not reducing the amount of money available for permanent housing.
Thank you for that clarification. That is absolutely correct.
All right, we are replacing this money with money from other sources. In fact, it sounds like we're actually increasing it. And that this money that needs to be spent fairly soon will be put to a very immediate use with helping youth who are experiencing homelessness.
That is correct. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. In that case, we'll move to a vote. Are there any negative votes? All right, hearing none, motion carries. Next, you have an authorization to submit a funding application to the Pennsylvania Housing Affordability and Rehabilitation Enhancement Fund.
Thank you. And as exactly as you just said, Commissioner Arkush, we are constantly increasing the availability of funding for both immediate needs and long-term needs. Examples of those that I just gave were through ARPA, our Home ARP grant, and here this will be a resolution for a third opportunity that we will be going after to increase availability of fund for housing and homeless services. Next slide, please. So the Pennsylvania Housing Affordability and Rehabilitation Enhancement Fund, or FAIR, is money that is managed by the state agency at the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency, or PHFA. They receive the funding from a number of sources, including a portion of the Realty Transfer Tax and the National Housing Trust Fund. This funding is available to government and nonprofit entities throughout all of Pennsylvania. My office, the Montgomery County Office of Housing and Community Development, via our Your Way Home program, hope to submit an application for funding for FAIR in the amount of $1 million to support households experiencing or at risk of homelessness. And again, I just want to highlight that this grant competition is available throughout all 67 counties as well. And our proposed project will benefit likely more than 300 households, very low and low income, who are either already experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness. If awarded, we will use these funds to support our Your Way Home programs, including rapid rehousing, call center operations, street outreach operations, emergency shelter operations, and homeless prevention programs.
Okay. I will move that the proper county officials, in accordance with the authority conferred by law, subject to the approval of the county solicitor, are hereby authorized to submit a proposal for funding to the Pennsylvania Housing Affordability and Rehabilitation Enhancement Fund for a total of $1 million. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Lawrence. Ms. Silver, what is the time frame on this? If we are successful, when can we expect to
We
receive
will
the funds?
hear in early to mid 2023.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. Are there any negative votes? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. All right, Mr. Hartman. Authorization of the acquisition of conservation and trail easements for the Camp Laughing Waters property.
Great. Thanks, Kelly. Good morning, Commissioners. Today we are seeking your approval to formally allocate $2.7 million of county open space funds for the conservation easement acquisition of the Girl Scouts Camp Laughing Waters property, which is located in New Hanover and Upper Frederick Townships. I direct your attention to the slide on the screen. The large red star in the western part of the county represents the location of Camp Laughing Waters. Next slide, please. And this is an enlargement and an aerial photograph of the Camp Laughing Waters property itself. The orange outline is the outline of the overall property. It's 455 acres. You can see that it's comprised of a number of different habitat types on the Girl Scouts property, from woodlands to riparian areas to open fields and meadows. Natural Lands and the Girl Scouts of Eastern Pennsylvania have been working together since 2013 to permanently preserve Camp Laughing Waters. Since receiving funding from the Pennsylvania DCNR in a grant amount of $500,000 in 2021, Natural Lands has entered into an agreement of sale with the Girl Scouts for the conservation easement totaling approximately $3.9 million. This conservation easement, which Natural Lands will hold and to which the county will be a beneficiary, will permanently protect the 455 acres of open space by permanently limiting the development potential of the property. The Girl Scouts will continue to own and maintain the property, and Montgomery County will hold a trail easement on it, contributing approximately 2 miles to the future Sunrise Trail and Swamp Creek Greenway. Next slide, please. This is the bottom of the Camp Laughing Waters property. That yellow area that you see basically hugging the bottom line of the property represents the approximate location of where the county trail easement will be. There will be 2 small parking areas at either end to provide the public with a place to park when they visit the property, and then they would be able to walk along that trail easement, which would be maintained by the county. Per the agreement of sale, the county will pay the $2.7 million in 3 installments. While we are still negotiating the exact amount of these installment payments, they will be approximately 1/3 at closing, 1/3 on the first anniversary of closing, and 1/3 on the second anniversary of closing, and settlement is anticipated for late this year or early 2023. At its March 2021 meeting, the County Open Space Board did recommend the $2.7 million allocation of county funds. And lastly, it's important to note that this project is a multi-entity funding partnership. Next slide, please. As this slide shows, Hanover Township and Upper Frederick Township are both making financial contributions toward the Camp Laughing Waters acquisition, and as mentioned above, Natural Lands did receive a $500,000 grant from PADCNR in 2021, and in addition, which you can also see here, that the Girl Scouts are making a seller assist of nearly $300,000 toward the transaction. So it's a nice example of how multiple entities come together to contribute to a really important open space project.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Hartman. I will move that the proper county officials, in accordance with the authority conferred by law, subject to the approval of the county solicitor, are hereby authorized to execute the necessary documents and take the necessary actions to finalize the county's allocation of $2.7 million of county open space funds for the conservation easement acquisition on the Girl Scouts Camp Laughing Waters property in New Hanover and Upper Frederick Townships. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Lawrence. Any board comments? All right, hearing none, we'll move to a vote. Are there any negative votes? Hearing none, motion carries.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
All right, Mr. Edmond, approval of a bridge reimbursement agreement with Lower Salford for the Burgess Mill Road Bridge.
Yes, good afternoon, Commissioners. Good to see you. Before you is an action for your consideration to enter into a reimbursement agreement with Lower Salford Township to help move forward the Burgess Mill Road Bridge. It's County Bridge number 146. If we could put the map up, Kelly, just to show you where we are. This is a picture of the bridge. We just took that this week. It's a 130-year-old bridge. It's not in good condition, and you basically can't get more than one car across it when it is open and not failing. So this bridge is what we're talking about. Next slide. To give you a sense of where we are in Lower Salford, in the western corner of Lower Salford. So you can see from the star, roughly between Harleysville and Schwenksville, in the western third of the county. Kelly? So in red are the park boundaries. This bridge is right next to a park. The park is called Berge Park. And the thing about it is it was bought by Lower Salford in the 1970s. And when it was bought with state preservation money, which came with a clause. And that clause was that the township could not sell any part of it off without making some sort of a mitigation to the loss of parkland. So red is the boundary of the park. It's a pretty big park. What we need in yellow is about 6,200 square feet, and some of it's in the stream, some of it's on the banks. It's not really important land, but because of that clause, we have to do something to make them whole. And so the value of that land is about $20,000, and we need to make a $20,000 or so investment in the park. And so Lower Salford staff and county staff sat down and discussed and agreed that that blue line, a 755 linear foot long path with a scenic overlook, was what the township wanted us to build. However, it costs more than $20,000. So this reimbursement agreement would allow for the county to incorporate the township's plans to do that blue line into our bridge project, and then the township will reimburse us the cost of that effort minus the $20,000 contribution. So it's a way for us to efficiently provide something, get DCNR to sign off on the right-of-way acquisition we need in yellow, and be efficient in how we spend our money and get this done. So that's what you have before you. I'll just add that the reimbursement agreement was agreed to by the Lower Salford Township Supervisors. They've signed it, so it's now before the county for our consideration, your consideration, and we're asking you to consider that today.
Thank you. I will move that the proper county officials, in accordance with the authority conferred by law, subject to the approval of the county solicitor, are hereby authorized to enter into a reimbursement agreement with Lower Salford Township with a cost of $20,000 for Montgomery County's portion of construction of a hiking trail in Bergy Park. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Lawrence. Mr. Edmund, I assume that Lower Salford is enthusiastic about this, it would seem. This trail helps meet some of their long-term planning goals.
Yes, it does. It helps them meet their open space goals, helps them improve their park, which is a really beautiful park. If you've ever been down there, it's a little bit hidden away, but it's got a farmstead and some trails, and like I said, it goes back 50 years. I should also add, Dr. Arkush, that the $20,000 that we normally would be giving them to buy it, the township is waiving that. So essentially, we're not giving them money for the right-of-way. We are making the trail improvement in lieu of that. So it works out for all parties.
Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. Are there any negative votes? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. And next, Mr. Stein, we have approval of a grant of right-of-way in Green Lane Park to Verizon.
Yes, Verizon Pennsylvania is in the process of upgrading their fiber optic networks in various parts of the county, including in the Green Lane area. As part of that, they'd like to improve some of their facilities in Green Lane, particularly in one of our buildings. This grant of right-of-way would allow them to do so, and there's no exchange of any funds beyond this.
I will move that the proper county officials, in accordance with the authority conferred by law, subject to the approval of the county solicitor, are hereby authorized to execute the necessary documents to grant right-of-way access to Verizon Pennsylvania, LLC, for the purposes of constructing and maintaining communication equipment at the county's Green Lane Park. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Lawrence. Any board comment?
Will it help with service up there? Do you know?
It will help with the service for our employees. I don't know if that actually extends to the Wi-Fi that's given to the public. Can't promise that.
Will it help with my drop calls up there?
Yes.
Okay. If there are no additional comments, we'll move to a vote. Any negative votes? Hearing none, motion carries. Ms. Perdue. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. You should have in front of you the final copy of the Commissioners Department's personnel list. It is a 3-page document dated Wednesday, November 16th, 2022, with a timestamp of 9:30 a.m. All positions have been reviewed and accounted for and are presented for consideration.
Thank you. I'll move to approve the November 17th, 2022 personnel presentation as given by Director of Human Resources, Ms. Donna Perdue, and to authorize the proper county officials to execute the same. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Lawrence. Any board comment? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. Are there any negative votes? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. All right, Ms. O'Malley, advertisements of bids and RFPs.
Yes. Number 1, we have a bid on behalf of Assets and Infrastructure for a flashing beacon replacement on the Perkiomen Trail in Collegeville. The successful responder will provide installation of a pedestrian flashing beacon for the intersection of Perkiomen Trail at Gravel Pike. Contract will be awarded to the lowest responsible bidder. 2, bid on behalf of Assets and Infrastructure for 2 garage door replacements in 1 Montgomery Plaza. The successful responder will provide and install 2 rolling gate doors in 1 Montgomery Plaza. Contract will be awarded to the lowest responsible bidder. 3, bid on behalf of District Attorney for a vehicle. The successful responder will provide a 2022 SUV. Contract will be awarded to the lowest responsible bidder. 4, RFP on behalf of Assets and Infrastructure for Coroner's Office moving services from Norristown to Eagleville. The successful responder will provide moving services for the Montgomery County Coroner's Office from its present location in Norristown to its new location at the Emergency Operation Campus in Eagleville. Contract will be awarded to the highest rated responder. 5, RFP on behalf of the Recovery Office for consulting services supporting the compensation model update study. The successful responder will augment the work of county staff to update its current compensation program. Responsibilities include collecting and analysis of comparable salary and staffing models, data collection, model research, and program testing. Consultant will work at the direction of countywide employee team. Contract will be awarded to the highest rated responder. All RFPs and bids are available on the county's purchasing website at www.montgomery.org/purchasing.
Thank you. I will move to approve the preceding requests for the advertisement of bids and RFPs as described by the Deputy Chief Operating Officer, Ms. Barbara O'Malley, and to authorize the proper county officials to execute the same, subject to the approval of the county solicitor. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Lawrence. Any board comment? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. Are there any negative votes? Hearing none, motion carries. Next, awards of contract for the county.
Yes, 1, contract award, assets and infrastructure, propane for various county facilities, Suburban Propane of Whippany, New Jersey, $35,000. Contract provides for the supply of propane at various county facilities for the 2023 term. Suburban Propane is the owner of the tanks and the only supplier that can provide the propane. 2, contract award, assets and infrastructure, construction reimbursement for Church Road Bridge in Upper Marion Township, Upper Marion Transportation Authority of King of Prussia, PA, $55,391.71. Contract provides for previously agreed upon reimbursement costs to the Upper Marion Transportation Authority for the replacement of Church Road Bridge in Upper Marion Township. 3, contract award, Health and Human Services, Black Fly Pesticide Spraying Services, PA Department of Environmental Protection of Harrisburg, PA, $22,000. The county participates in a black fly suppression program sponsored by the DEP and managed by the Office of Public Health. The DEP entered into contracts with spray contractors for the purpose of suppressing black fly populations through the aerial application of a state and federally approved pesticide. Spray operations occurred during the 2022 calendar year. 4, contract award, Health and Human Services, Wastewater Surveillance Consultants, Biobot Analytics Incorporated of Cambridge, Massachusetts, $416,000. Contract provides a wastewater surveillance consultant to work with the Office of Public Health staff to conduct influent wastewater sampling. Contract also provides for the transporting of samples, provide laboratory services to conduct wastewater testing for SARS-CoV-2, RNA, and all variants, provide equipment and supplies as needed, and collate, interpret, and present data. RFP 2248 was viewed by 20 providers with 4 responses received. Contract is awarded to the highest rated responder. Contract is for a period of 1 year with 3 optional annual renewal terms. 5, contract award, Information and Technology Solutions, Geographical Information Software Maintenance, Environmental Systems Research Incorporated of Redlands, California, $77,405. Contract provides software maintenance for the county's proprietary geographical information system. Contract period is for the 2023 term. 6, contract award, Public Safety Warehouse, Inventory Management Software, ASAP Systems of San Jose, California, $21,995. Contract provides warehouse inventory management software. Contract is for a period of 1 year. 7, contract award, Public Safety, Uninterrupted Power Supply Service, Core Power Incorporated of King of Prussia, PA, $24,560. Contract provides a service contract for the UPS system at the Emergency Operating Center for a 1-year period. Services are available through a PA state contract. 8, contract award, Public Safety, Wireless Services for Mobile Data Terminals, Verizon Wireless of Lehigh Valley, PA, $60,000. Services provide connectivity for mobile data computers to the 911 system. Contract valid for a period of 1 year. Services are available through a National Association of State Procurement Officials Value Point Cooperative Contract. 9, contract award, Public Safety, Smart 911 Software, Rave Wireless Incorporated of Framingham, Massachusetts, $58,802.06. Contract provides for Smart 911 service for the county's 911 operators. Smart 911 assists 911 call takers and first responders in making better, faster decisions and shortens response time in order to save lives. Service is for a 1-year period beginning November 11, 2022. Software is proprietary. 10, contract award, Youth Center Security Camera Upgrade, Valley Forge Security Center of King of Prussia, PA, $33,968. Contract provides additional security cameras to be focused on the facility and the entire parking lot area. Equipment and installation services are available through a PA CoSTARS project. 11, contract renewal, Public Safety, Disaster Debris Clearance and Removal Services, DRC Emergency Services, LLC of Galveston, Texas. Contract provides as-needed disaster debris clearance and removal services for Montgomery County in the event of an emergency. Event prices is per the logistical services fee schedule submitted with provider's response, and services are contracted at the time of an emergency occurrence. This is the second renewal of 4 optional annual renewal terms. 12, contract amendment, assets and infrastructure, Bridge 162, construction, Montgomery County, Richard E. Pearson Construction Company, Incorporated of Piles Grove, New Jersey, $15,000. Contract provided the replacement of County Bridge number 162, Stump Road over Little Neshaminy Creek in Montgomery Township. Amendment provides reconfiguration of the guide rail required to meet specifications due to utility clearances issues and additional asphalt mill and overlay to address ponding concerns at transition to Township Road. The amendment also provides a time extension of the contract through November 24, 2022 due to utility relocation delay at onset of construction. 3, contract amendment, assets and infrastructure, Bridge 166, construction inspection services, New Hanover Township, traffic planning and design of Pottstown, PA, no cost. Original contract was for a consultant to provide full-time on-site construction oversight and inspection during the replacement of County Bridge number 166, located on Swamp Pike over Swamp Creek in New Hanover Township. Amendment provides a no-cost time extension of the contract through November 10, 2022, due to delayed start of construction due to utility relocations. 14, contract amendment, Planning Commission, supplemental reimbursement agreement, Ridge Pike Improvement Project, $17,290,749. Contract between PennDOT and Montgomery County provided a funding agreement reimbursing the county for the Ridge Pike Improvement Project for Section B, Ridge Pike Turnpike to Chemical Road, County Bridge 257 in Plymouth Township. The updated reimbursement agreement allows for construction costs and right-of-way land costs. 15, contract amendment, Planning Commission, supplemental reimbursement agreement, Ridge Pike Improvement Project, $8,321,250. Contract between PennDOT and Montgomery County provided a funding agreement reimbursing the county for the Ridge Pike Improvement Project, Section B, Turnpike to Chemical Road, Plymouth Township, roadway improvements in Plymouth Township. Amended agreement allows for construction, right-of-way, and final design costs. 16, there are 7 contract renewals and 2 amendments for Health and Human Services. Those providers and services are listed at the end of the agenda and the back of the room.
Thank you. I will move to approve the preceding awards of contract as described by the Deputy Chief Operating Officer, Ms. Barbara O'Malley, and to authorize the proper county officials to execute the same subject to the approval of the county solicitor. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Lawrence. Any board comment?
I'm opposed to contract award number 16, the Health and Human Services contract list. So I request that the amendment on the floor is amended.
Okay. Then we will vote on items 1 through 15. Any additional board comment? All right, hearing none, we'll move to a vote. Are there any negative votes? All right, items 1 through 15 are approved. I will move to approve preceding award of contract number 16 as described by the Deputy Chief Operating Officer, Ms. Barbara O'Malley, and to authorize the proper county officials to execute the same, subject to the approval of the county solicitor. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Lawrence. Any board comment? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. Are there any negative votes?
Negative vote.
Okay, motion passes 2 to 1. Next, awards of contract for assets and infrastructure.
Yes. 1, contract amendment, general construction, 1 Montgomery Plaza Electrical System, TN Ward Company of Ardmore, PA, $21,310.17. Original contract provided general construction services for the construction of a new electrical infrastructure system in 1 Montgomery Plaza. Amendment provides resurfacing of cast stone for graffiti, additional restoration of concrete masonry unit at the guard booth due to revised bus duct path. 2, contract amendment, fire protection, 1 Montgomery Plaza Electrical System, Guy M. Cooper Incorporated of Willow Grove, PA, $21,563.10. Original contract provided mechanical services for the construction of a new electrical infrastructure system in 1 Montgomery Plaza. Amendment provides for the replacement of a leaking gate valve in the fire pump room per county request and the relocation of branch lines for a new bus duct support steel on parking level 2. 3, contract amendment, assets and infrastructure construction. Public Safety Warehouse, S.J. Thomas of Lansdowne, PA, $1,107,386. Original contract provided for the construction of a garage facility and warehouse building at the Department of Public Safety, Eagleville campus. Contract amendment costs are included in the existing budget lines and will not increase the overall budget of this project. Amendment changes include construction permit fees, additional engineering services, as well as a deduction for the construction trailer. Modification of concrete masonry unit blocks and foundation modifications. New manholes required by the Sewer Authority as well as the labor associated with the installation. County requested extension of canopy of warehouse to cover loading dock. Various exploratory digs at the request of PA American Water to locate source of leak and to determine exact layout of pipe from meter pit. Modification of warehouse sprinkler system to early suppression, fast response ceiling mounted system, plus added permit required fee by the township. Addition of stone paved lot at county's request. additional electrical work as a result of county-requested forklift charging station. Cost to raise the installed manholes to the revised grade elevation per request of engineering firm Gannett Fleming. Labor, material, and equipment costs for water tap required in accordance with line extension agreement between PA American Water and County. Removal of monument sign and security modifications at request of design team, addition to dock leveler at county request. Additional building mounted signage at county request. Expansion of warehouse office area with additional windows per county request. Cost of rock excavation as a result of rock encountered while installing sanitary lines. Services are available through a Keystone Purchasing Network contract.
Okay. I will move to approve the preceding awards of contract as described by the Deputy Chief Operating Officer, Ms. Barbara O'Malley, and to authorize the proper county officials to execute the same, subject to the approval of the county solicitor. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Lawrence. Any board comments? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. Are there any negative votes?
I'm a negative vote.
Okay. Motion passes 2-1. Any closing commissioner comments? No? Okay. Then I'll announce that we have several upcoming meetings. First, the election board will be meeting, as Commissioner Lawrence noted a couple hours ago, on Friday, November the 18th at 12:30. Next will be public hearings on the 2023 budget, December 1st, 2022 at 10 a.m. and 5:30 p.m. That will be hybrid. And then our next Board of Commissioners meeting, December 15th, 2022. And with that, I will move to adjourn the November 17th, 2022 meeting of the Montgomery County Board of Commissioners. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Lawrence. Any board comment? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. Any negative votes? Hearing none, a motion carries, and we will convene Salary Board. I see the Controller has joined us remotely. Good morning, Controller Sanchez.
Morning.
Francisco, do we have any public comment on Salary Board? Okay. Ms. Perdue.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of Salary Board. You should have in front of you the final copy of the Salary Board list. It is a 4-page document dated Wednesday, November 16th, 2022, with a timestamp of 9:30 a.m. Of note, we have 3 retirees: Mary Beth Tammany from adult probation after 19 years, Erica Volz from domestic relations after 5 years, and Ronald Deal from public safety after 40 years. All positions have been reviewed and accounted for and are presented for Salary Board consideration.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the November 17th, 2022 Salary Board presentation as given by Director of Human Resources, Ms. Donna Pardue, and to authorize the proper county officials to execute the same?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Lawrence. Is there a second?
Second.
By Controller Sanchez. Any board comment? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. Are there any negative votes? Hearing none, motion carries. And I understand we have a retiree acknowledgement? Yes. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Dennis Arrangers. I'm the Fire and EMS Communications Manager here at the Department of Public Safety Emergency Dispatch Services. And I'm here to speak on behalf of Ron Deal. Ron Deal, Dispatcher 153. Ron began his career with Montgomery County Public Safety Emergency Communications Division in August of 1982. Ron's career expands 40 years. Most of those 40 years have been spent as a fire and EMS dispatcher. He was a platoon supervisor in the late 80s and early 90s, but found his way back to doing what he loved most, sending the fire and EMS agencies to the emergencies and interacting with them to manage the incidents. Ron has mentored, coached, and trained so many coworkers over the years. His focus was getting help dispatched to the emergency in an expeditious manner and assisting those agencies with all requests. Dispatcher 153 is so well known by our fire and EMS community. With his clear, crisp, authentic voice, he will surely be missed by many, and especially by his coworkers. Congratulations, Ron. Enjoy your well-deserved retirement.
Thank you so much for that lovely tribute. And we certainly wish Ron all of the best in his retirement. And with that, I will ask if there's a motion to adjourn the November 17th, 2022 meeting of the Montgomery County Salary Board.
I will make that motion.
Commissioner Lawrence so moves. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Controller Sanchez. Any board comment? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. Any negative votes? Hearing none, meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.